Trustee Vargas,
Here.
trustee Smithfield,
Here.
trustee Kelly,
Hi, present.
and I'm present and accounted for. I have a report.
Read on it.
On March 14th, 2024, the board in closed session took action to release and reassign the following employee from their current administrative position pursuant to Ed Code Section 44951, effective at the end of 2023-2024 school year, and directed the superintendent or designee to send out the appropriate legal notice, employee number 1:24-03-14-01. The vote was as follows: 5 ayes, 0 noes, and 0 abstentions. Next is approval of, actually, we have a couple requests to move some action items to the front.
Just one adjustment. I recommend that we move the item 17B and move it to item, the second item under 7, which would be 7B.
So moving 17B, which is accept pupil transportation information.
Report with an
Report.
outline.
Moving that to 7B.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Under 7.
All right. Can I get a motion for that?
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Second,
Moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Vargas by 10 seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda with the aforementioned amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
aye.
Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries 5-0. All right, so next on the agenda, we have district announcements, superintendent's comments.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be back at our regularly scheduled board meeting. I just have one important announcement to make. And as I make the announcement, I would like Alicia to come forward, one of our student ambassadors. I'd like to introduce Alicia, and then she's here to make a very important statement. This month, we are celebrating Women's History Month. Our school district, our region, and our citizens from across our county are celebrating women's history. In honor of this important period of recognition, I've asked Alicia Rankin, a junior from Mission Vista High School, to share her reflections on women history and the importance our district plays in creating the conditions for women of all ages to live, learn, and lead. I want to make one quick statement about Alicia, and then I'll let her take the floor. Alicia is one of many talented and dedicated young leaders in our school district, helping to implement the elements of our learner portrait, global citizens with an equity lens. Students, and she emulates what I'm about to read. Students are culturally literate and multilingual. They are knowledgeable and curious about world cultures, traditions, politics, beliefs, and understanding global history and from multiple perspectives. They understand themselves in relation to the world and are informed about our current events and their impact nationally and locally. Alicia?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Alicia Rankin, and as a 16-year-old young African-American woman standing here today during Women's History Month, I'm deeply honored to share my journey and what it means to be a woman and a leader in my community. Growing up, I faced many challenges that tested my resilience, but they've also fueled my determination to make a difference. Being a woman, especially a young African-American woman, means carrying the legacy of those who fought for my right to stand before you today. It means embracing my unique identity and using it to inspire others. The women who came before me have paved a path of courage, resilience, and determination. They faced unimaginable obstacles and fought tirelessly for the rights and freedoms that I benefit from today. From suffragists marching for the right to vote to civil rights activists challenging racial injustice, these women showed unwavering strength in the face of adversity. Their sacrifices and achievements inspire me to continue their legacy, to stand up for what is right, and to never take for granted the opportunities they fought so hard to secure. In my community, I've tried to be a voice for change. I've organized events, mentored younger girls, and worked tirelessly to promote equality and justice. These experiences have taught me the true power of leadership, not in the titles we hold, but in the impact we have on others. Their stories remind me that progress is not always easy or linear, but it is always worth fighting for. They taught me that being a woman means standing up for myself and others even when it is difficult. Their legacy challenges me to be a leader in my generation, use my voice to advocate for change, and never to underestimate the power of a determined woman. As I reflect on their struggles and triumphs, I am filled with gratitude for their sacrifices and a renewed commitment to continue their work. As I look to the future, I see endless possibilities. I envision a world where women of all backgrounds are empowered to lead and where our voices are heard and respected. I see myself continuing to fight for justice and equality, not just for women, but for all marginalized communities. Being a woman during Women's History Month means honoring the past while shaping the future. It means standing together in solidarity, celebrating our achievements, and paving the way for generations to come. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. Let's continue to inspire, empower, and uplift each other as we write the next chapter of women's history.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Ms.
Alicia.
Rankin.
Before I hand it back to our board president, I just wanted to thank Sophia for being here tonight. You'll hear from her later on. She's going to give her report. And then we also have a number of our school board members who made sure they notified us that in addition to being leaders in the school district are also athletes and expert drama artists on the stage, and that is what they're doing tonight. I'll hand it back to our board president.
All right. All right, next on the agenda is number 6, presentation by community members, public comments, community members. Any members of the audience who wishes to hold and speak to an agenda item or at the appropriate time speak to an item not on the agenda should complete a hold card and present it to the board secretary before item 2A or before the meeting begins. In an effort to gain as much public input as possible, individual speakers will be limited to 3 minutes or less. A total of 20 minutes will be held for public comments under item 6A. The remainder of public comments will be continued after completion of discussion action items as necessary. So the first speaker we have for 6A is Robert Johnson, followed by Tom Burton. Sure, 3 minutes, 3 minutes.
You got the timer going? Hello, board members, student board member, Dr. Doyle, and my lovely wife who's sitting at home listening to me. Some of you may know me from the different committees that I've been on over the years, or even from just being here in these meetings. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Robert Johnson. I am with the district grounds department. I'm also with CSEA's bargaining team and on the district's climate action committee. But I am here tonight because a few nights ago, I was talking to a young lady at Jersey Mike's while she was making my sandwich. I told her that I work for the school district, and she said that she had looked into being a substitute special needs aide. But she realized that she makes more money working as at Jersey Mike's and than she would be working here. So I asked her what Jersey Mike's started at, and she said $20 per hour. So I believe our lowest paid special needs aide started just over $17 per hour. So based on a 6-hour workday, this person is making approximately $18 more per day, $90 more per week, and $360 more per month. So if she's wanting to put herself through school, this gives her more money to do that and still have some stuff left over to enjoy herself. So in order to find a way to recruit and retain qualified applicants and employees, the district needs to focus on a more competitive entry wage for these people. So the fact that fast food workers earn more per hour than what our employees who help to take care of our most precious students, to me, is concerning. So I hope you guys all feel the same way, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Tom. Jack.
Hello, my name is Tom. I'm the treasurer for the Vista High School Band and Pageantry Corps Boosters. Sorry, I'm here to request your attention to an action to resolve a problem that affects the band program. We're grateful that the district has come up and paid for a lot of the props, most of the transportation and uniforms, and it's been a huge impact on the program. However, excuse me. Basically, the district's been a little wishy-washy about paying our coaches. Every month now. They haven't been getting paid, they've been coming up for rent money. And, that's it, thanks, excuse me.
Sir, I have a clarifying question, please.
Yes,
You said you are the booster for the band at Vista High, is that correct,
yes,
sir?
ma'am.
And you were just referring to coaches, what coaches from what program, sir?
For the marching band program.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay, sir.
Thank
Thank you. All right. Jackie?
Hi, good evening. My apologies in advance if my voice is a bit shaky, but I'm not a part of your faculty. In fact, I'm very new to the public school community. I preface this by letting you know that I'm not here to advocate for other parents or to be a voice for other children. I'm here specifically to advocate for my daughter. She attends, she was a student in a Math 2 class with an instructor by the name of Miss Gwynn. And she did so well in that class, she aced the class, that she was confident that she could move forward onto Math 3 in her freshman year. Come to find out, she actually met with her counselor and she proactively on her own said, let me drop an elective, I'm gonna take Math 3 in preparation, get it done. So very motivated individual. When she entered Math 3, on February 2nd, I reached out to the counselor because my daughter was lost. Again, having aced Math 2, she was prepared, at least for the basics of Math 3. As I understand it, actually, these are the facts that I have to present to you today. I have been in contact with her school counselor, my ex-husband and I, on 4 different occasions. Mr. Walden and my ex-husband and I have had discussions. And again, I'm not here to speak for anyone else, but I can't help but question if they are getting the support from the district that they need to take some sort of action to help these students. I know for certain that half a dozen parents have met with the principal on this topic. At least 15 students from the campus have been called to speak with Mr. Walden. He's gathering information. Members of the staff have expressed concern. Sorry, I'm really shaky. Have expressed concern about how ill-prepared students that were in Math 2, specifically in Miss Gwynn's class, are not performing on level 3. So taking into consideration that there is a leap naturally, this is the next step. We expected some sort of struggle. So what we've done to help support our daughter is private tutors to the cost of $50 to $60 an hour. She has done before and after school tutoring. 3 out of 4 days, she proactively goes to meet with Miss Lee, her Math 3 teacher. And if there's, again, new to this community, boy, does she deserve some accolades. A selfless teacher who takes her personal time after school during lunch and invites not only my daughter, but other children in. I share this with you because I've asked for not special treatment, but let's do right. Again, I'm speaking for my daughter, but I know other children are impacted. What is being done to do right by these kids that are already in level 3? What's to happen administratively with Miss Gwynn? I don't want harm. I'm not here to affect her livelihood, but I am here to ask for, can we take a look, please, at what's going on in this situation?
Thank you,
with
ma'am. If you have any more information, you can send it to the board along with the gentleman before, Tom Burton. I know you left, sir, without reading your whole statement. Please send it to the board. And Robert Johnson, if you have anything else to add. Thank you, ma'am. Is that it? Trustee Rocco for
Yes,
speaker?
Madam.
Yes, okay. All right, next on the agenda, 7B, that we moved up. So 7B is,
We're gonna do 7A first, or you want to do 7B?
oh, yes, we're gonna do 7A, as you were. 7A, discussion action items, approve the second interim budget and resolution 24-19, identifying budget reductions needed in the 2024-25 school year. Ms. Shackelford, welcome. Thank you.
Before you begin, I just want to check with Trustee Kelly. Trustee Kelly, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, thank you. I can.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, so this evening, I'm here to present the second interim presentation. Our agenda for this evening, we'll start with the update on the governor's proposed budget that was released in January. And we'll spend some time talking on the current year budget and then moving on to our multi-year projections and next steps. So as a reminder, districts are required twice a year to submit an interim report to the state. The first interim is presented in December based on financials through October. Second interim is due by March 15th based on actuals through January 31st. Districts are also required to certify their financials at the same time they do their interim reports. There are 3 types of certifications listed here. You'll see positive, qualified, and negative. The staff is recommending to maintain our positive certification. I do have 2 footnotes which are impacting our multi-year projection. And that is a result of the first bullet of the governor's proposed budget with the COLA decreased of 2.76%, originally at 3.94%, and subsequently year 3, 2.73%. These COLAs have been incorporated in our multi-year that we'll look at later in the presentation. The other item that is impacting us at second interim is we now have our UPP, or our unduplicated pupil percentage, for 23-24, that is due to the state December 15th. So right after we do the first interim, we find out our UPP. We did drop fairly significantly this year. We went down to 64.23%, so it will impact current year financials and the 2 out years. Starting with the governor's budget highlights. The LAO every year releases their budget forecast or revenue forecast. And the November-December timeframe, as everyone may recall, tax collections for 22-23 were announced in November, being $26 billion less, which then results in the LAO releasing their revenue projections in December with a $68 billion deficit over the 3-year financial period. And then the governor releases his budget in January at a $38 billion deficit. I do have a little note because there's a lot of numbers being thrown around. The original governor's deficit was $58 billion. After adjustments and initial solutions, that's what generates that $38 billion versus the 68. So originally it was 58 governor, 68 LAO. The governor does maintain his priorities to keep the cuts as far away from the schools as possible. So in his proposal for 24-25, he does not propose any cuts to school districts, no sweeping of excess funds, and no deferrals of cash. Unfortunately, with the lower property tax collections of $26 billion last year, by formula and by ed code, our Prop 98 guarantee, which is our primary source of revenue, and approximately 40% of the state's general fund, has to be rebenched down to match what the actual revenue collections were last year. So overall, school districts are receiving $11.8 billion less in 22-23. That is our ongoing funding. So it starts, it frameworks our future funding. And so as a result of that rebenching, though, as I mentioned before, the governor stands by not to implement any cuts against the school district. So he does have several solutions to keep those cuts away. Unfortunately, part of the governor's budget is that an update on the COLA. And just as a reminder, that COLA is not generated by California economy. It's a federal percentage that's generated on a series of economic factors. And so unfortunately for us, it does impact the Prop 98 and it impacts our LCFF revenues. So just a slight update, we do have January revenue collections. Unfortunately, as you saw in that first bullet, there was a revenue difference projection between the governor and the LAO, and you'll see in that red box that the tax collections in January did come in $6 billion lower, which is unfortunate because January was the first month of the governor's revised revenue projections, and that very first month coming in $6 billion lower. So as a result, the LAO has also revised their deficit to be increasing to $73 billion. This week, we did have yet another update. Sorry, we go day by day this time frame. February revenues did come in and they were $1 billion higher. However, February is a small month. They don't consider it a significant tax collection month, so it's not something that's significant enough to change that revenue deficit. On the restricted side, not a lot of changes. As I mentioned, the governor's position to keep cuts away from those learning recovery programs. However, on the school facilities side, proposing to continue his delays and reductions to those facility programs. On the legislature side, so now that the governor has released his budget in January, it goes to the legislature, the assembly and the Senate. They started their budget subcommittee hearings the end of February. The LAO, which is the Legislative Analyst Office, which is the equivalent of the Department of Finance, did testify at the subcommittees. They provided several recommendations. Their recommendations, you'll see a list of those. The most important one is that $8 billion solution where the governor is proposing to close part of the budget gap by delaying an $8 billion payment and taking credit for it over a series of 5 years, paying it down so that it doesn't have to be reduced to school districts. It's a little accounting adjustment. It's a little controversial because what it does is it's committing California future budgets to pay for that $8 billion. So essentially kicking the can down the road. They are also proposing and support the use of reserves to help with that shortfall. They are proposing to eliminate any of the spending increases in the program, including the COLA 0.76%. Overall, there's $1.5 billion of new spending in the governor's plan. They are proposing to not proceed with any of it. And then also they're proposing looking at the various different programs. You'll see they're reducing the ELOP, universal meals, transportation, and TK. And so in the red box at the time of publishing, there was no official update or response from the legislature. About 4 o'clock this afternoon, the Senate did publish their first initial response to the governor's budget. We'll be analyzing that over the next couple of days, but essentially they did support some of the items, which includes utilizing the reserves, doing funding shifts, funding reductions, did not talk about the COLA at all. And they introduced a new solution, which is deferrals. And so what deferrals mean is delaying cash payments to schools until a later period. So the main one that they like to do when times get bad is to take our final June payment and delay it until July. So you literally delay it 1 day. It saves you money in that budget year and it increases the impact to the next year. And so depending on how they would structure those deferrals, it can actually cost districts funds because they may have to borrow funds in order to have cash flow each month to be able to make payroll and pay their bills. So next slide. So total general fund, moving on to the current year. So this is total general fund, comparing first interim to second interim. Our revenues did increase by $11 million. That is primarily 10 million of that is on the restricted side. We are very fortunate to be receiving additional grants. Unfortunately, they come on the restricted side, not so much on the unrestricted side. On the expenditure side, a decrease of about $18 million. That is from the timing, because as we go through our programs, and fortunately for the district, we are receiving many funds that are multi-year in nature. So as we get a sense of what we're spending this year and not spending, we will move those funds to the following year. So you'll see expenditures and revenues at the end of the year will start truing up what we actually think we'll be spending and receiving. So overall, the ending fund balance increasing by about $30 million. That is because of those expenditures going down based on timing to next year and also additional revenues coming in. I want to spend a minute on the reserves at the bottom because we have some significant changes from first interim. So as always, the economic uncertainty is 3%. That is a calculation based on total general fund expenditures. So as your expenditures go down, in our case, the value of 3% is less. And so we set aside about $500,000 less based on those lower expenditures. Restricted grant carryover, as I mentioned, that's a timing issue. So as we get further into the year and get a sense of what programs are going to be spent, we'll start moving those funds, carrying it over to next year or deferring those funds. And so last year we ended up, about a $65 million restricted grant carryover. This year, even with, we did receive additional grants, but we're still probably going to finish the year with about that same carryover balance of 65 million. And again, the significant ones are those multi-years in nature. So our learning recovery block grant of about $23 million is in there. Our ELOP of about $11 million is in there. And then you've got your smaller multi-year community schools. SB HIP was another one, and some title carryovers as well. On the committed funds, the textbook, you'll see an increase of $800,000. Approximately 3 years ago, the district began negotiations and entered into agreement with a land swap with San Marcos with a property development. And so the agreement was for almost $2.3 million payment split into 2 payments because there were 2 developers involved. The second developer just completed their portion of the agreement. So we received that $800,000 payment. Based on the negotiated agreement, the direction was to use the settlement from this agreement to set aside a future textbook fund. And so you'll see, and there's a resolution later on the board agenda. When we say committed funds, the board has to take action to commit them, and then they cannot be taken out of reserves until the board takes action to uncommit them. So right now we have the 1.4 previously voted on. And so tonight there's a resolution to commit the second payment of 800,000. And then assignments, you'll see also have supplemental carryover. As we got further into the year, looking at where our spending is, this is that carryover bubble that's been going on for the last couple of years. We receive a lot of ESSER funds, and so the ability to spend those funds first that are expiring, supplemental concentration don't expire. And so these are the funds with our strategic plan that is going to help us through the economic downturn in the next couple of years. And so that $12 million is one. And again, with the LCAP, we do have to outline any spend with those $12 million. So as we go through budget development with the new LCAP, we'll have to identify plans for the current year allocation and then also with the carryover. Row 16 set aside salary adjustments. At first interim, we did an initial projection set aside in reserves. We continue to proceed through negotiations. And so we've updated the estimate based on a recent status at the table. And instead of putting it in reserves, the increase, which is now 12.57 million projection, you'll see in that text box, instead of the 8.8 million, which is where we were at in the fall, we've actually moved that up to the expenditure line. And so on the unrestricted side, that $12 million of carryover from LCFF is falling out, but then we're adding expenditures of $12.57 million because that payment would be effective in the current year. So not quite a wash, but I just wanted to point out that it is now in the expenditure line because we're moving. We have tentatively settled with one, so we wanted to make sure that it's represented in the expenditures and not just a set aside. On the unrestricted side, so diving a little bit deeper down, as I mentioned, of the increase in revenues, we are up $1.27 million. I'll go into the details, but that is primarily additional interest earned. We have been fortunate with these multi-year grants. When we receive those cash balances, they have been in the bank and they collect interest. So we're actually getting a little bit benefit on the unrestricted side due to that higher account balance of these restricted resources. You'll notice in the expenditures, as I mentioned, the LCFF supplemental concentration carryover, not quite offsetting with the projected salary set aside. So roughly a change of $335,000 in expenditures. Contributions, that is primarily on the special ed side, one row below. Slight drop in our contributions. That is driven by special ed, just a little bit of vacancy savings. We do have a little bit of good news. The county has already conducted a mid-year review of our MO because as we've gone through the last few years, struggling to meet that MO, and based on their mid-year review, we just got notification this week that we are on target and they agree that we should be able to meet our MO this year without challenges. So that was good news. On the reserve, so overall ending fund balance, not a lot of change, going from $42 million to $43 million. So just a net change of $1 million. We've already talked about all of those reserves. So at the end of the day, you'll see that bottom line, that unallocated balance decreasing to $15,899,000. And so that number is going to play a role in our multi-year, which we'll talk about later in the presentation. So as I mentioned, these are just the narratives of our revenue increasing, primarily the additional interest earned. I mentioned earlier, our unduplicated pupil percentage did decrease, so we did lose about $800,000 of revenue. And then, as I mentioned, that $800,000 collection of Muir Highlands, and you'll see the note on our Mo.
Pause this for a minute. President Alvarado and Julie Kelly has her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, just for my fellow trustees, I want to clarify my understanding of that UPP percentage is not that it actually decreased in terms of need and number of students, but it decreased in terms of form fatigue and the fact that our students no longer need, our families no longer need to complete the required form that helps us determine UPP because of universal free lunch. So it's a penalty, but it doesn't mean the need disappeared. If my understanding is correct, I think that's an important nuance.
Yeah, because this is the first year we've seen a decline. So during COVID, we were increasing each year. We had changed our strategy that very first year of COVID to collect forms across the entire district, because previously, because of the way that our meal programs work, because we are a community, a CEP program, so they only had to collect forms every 4 years. What we did change in 2020 was to make sure that we collected forms for all schools, all students. And so that helped actually identify, it increased us to 67%. We were also going through COVID. We did see a high number of unemployed, unfortunately, impact our families. And so this is the first year that we've seen a significant decline. Last year, it was just a couple of decimal tenths of a point, but this was significant. And because it's the first year, it's hard to tell. It could be a series of factors. What we're hearing from other districts is that universal meal service, there's no need to fill out that form because all students eat for free. And that program is also being discussed in the legislature because there's more participation, which is good because students get free breakfast and free lunch. In the sense from the state budget, they underestimated the impact, and the increased participation is causing the state to have to find additional funds to maintain that. So that's why that's being discussed at the state level. And to Julie's point, not having to fill out that free and reduced lunch application every year, you still have access to meals. So it's hard to assess how much of it is the form fatigue and how much of it maybe is that the families aren't able to afford rents in our community and maybe having to move north or east where there's lower rents. And so that's something that we'll need to analyze, but it's also something that we need to have on our radar when we start the school year, is that effort to work with families to fill out those forms, because that does provide them a significant amount of funds to the district.
I have a question. Are those forms mobile optimized for families to fill out on their forms easily?
They are in the parent portal as part of the registration packet. It's just not a required form that we can make required, so families can skip through it when they're filling out their registration
That's not my
paperwork.
question. My question is, when they use their phones to fill it out, is it optimized to make it easy for them?
I can verify that.
Yeah, that would be, because if it's not, that's an important thing, because that will turn off a lot of parents. I do have a question, another question though, going back to the budget, when you were talking about using the reserves. Is that the 3%, our 3%, or is that reserves from the state?
That's the required state 3% that we have to set aside.
So we
That's
are
the
allowed,
minimum
if we
threshold.
need to, we are allowed to use that during this time.
No.
No.
You always have to maintain at least a 3%.
For what purpose? I'm assuming that it's there in case we can't pay our bills.
Correct.
Okay. I got you. All right, thank you.
Ready to move on?
And then on the expenditure side, as I mentioned, besides the supplemental concentration, we did have a slight increase on the capital with our home to school transportation revenues and just some miscellaneous changes under hourly and contracted services. And then as our changes on the restricted side, if we increase our expenditures, it is a benefit on the unrestricted side as well, because our indirects go up. So our indirects did increase slightly, so it's another $360,000 benefit, because it reduces our unrestricted expenses. On the restricted side, as I mentioned, revenues increasing by the $10 million. Almost half of that is the ESSER 3 timing, and so ESSER 3 expires in September, and so this is the runway that we're getting down to the wire as far as expending our remaining funds, and so we're seeing an uptick on our spending. We just received our approval from the CDE on the HVAC side finally, so we've started making those purchases, and that one will be a timing issue because they'll be installing over the summer, so we might see another fluctuation with their ESSER funds, but we'll get that benefit on next year in the summer with the increased indirects if it does cross over to next year. Other expenditures, we received funds for our second cohort for community schools and SVHIP, Dr. McKeon. So we were fortunate to receive 1.6 million of first payment of the SVHIP grant. So that's additional funds also on the restricted side. And I've talked about the expenditures from a timing perspective. Those expenditures go down, but that's just because we'll spend those funds next year. You'll see here the details. So as I mentioned, the community schools, the ESSER 3 funds, literacy revenue. We got a little bit of revenue on that one. We had another school qualify along with our LCFF equity multiplier, finally receiving those funds. However, it comes with a caveat that you can't spend them until your board approves your 24-25 LCAP, but they give you and they take credit for giving you the money in 23-24. So those funds will just carry over to next year when they can be spent. And likewise, as mentioned, expenditures decreasing in those areas. So this is the same, I included this slide from first interim. So again, looking at those funds as they expire, mainly by September 30th, 2024, the ESSER 3. There's about $9 million that was unallocated. We have been working on developing solutions. One of those I've mentioned in the red box. So our Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, which does not expire until June 30th, 2028. We had originally planned to spend $12 million approximately, that very last row grant this year. And then that would have left $10,594 million to spend on the remaining years. So moving those expenditures up to that unallocated ESSER 3 actually frees up just about all of those learning recovery block grants. And so that's one of our strategies is now we have that $23 million to spend from 24-25 all the way through 27-28. So that's going to help us on the LCAP side to maintain some of those programs that we want and give it a longer runway to support those programs. Moving on to the multi-year. So as I mentioned, the ADA funding cliff is here. In 24-25, you'll see our funded ADA dropping down to 17,525, coupled with the drop in COLA of only 0.76%, a slight recovery of the COLA in year 3 of 2.73%. As I mentioned, that supplemental concentration funding, about midway down, receiving $40 million this year. Next year and year 3, as our UPP is dropping, our ADA is dropping, and our attendance is dropping, that impacts also our supplemental concentration funding, not just our base grant funding. Our base grant is primarily impacted by that COLA, that 3.94%, which roughly generated a loss of almost $10 million in year 2, which we'll talk about in the multi-year. So you'll see the other main revenue adjustment assumptions. In the little cloud, my little happy news, we are still maintaining a higher attendance. So based off of our January attendance collection, we are at 94.22%. Our final attendance reporting, or called our P2, is due in April. So our attendance gain this year won't impact us because in the little red box, you'll note we have a rolling 3-year average. So our ADA funding is based off the prior 3-year rolling average or the higher of the current year or prior year. And so fortunately, an uptick in attendance wasn't enough this year to bounce us up because our rolling 3-year average is still higher because we're declining districts. So typically we will default to that rolling 3-year average because our previous years have a higher ADA.
I have a question, Ms. Shackelford. So the projection for 24-25 with COLA, you put the assumption of what the governor's office added at 0.76 rather than what the LAO recommended to the state senate and state assembly. Is that correct?
We currently use the school services dartboard. And so the school services dartboard, because we don't know any information about what the legislature is going to negotiate with the governor, we use the current published COLA factor. And so that is the 0.76. One of the last 2 remaining factors was released. It's a slight uptick, so it's about 0.87%. So there is still a potential that the legislature and the governor can negotiate to not fund the COLA. And so without that uncertainty, the recommendation that we've received from both the county and school services is that 0.76. If we wanted to do a more conservative multi-year, we could remove the 0.76. And that would just increase the potential deficit going forward, yes.
Yeah, and so worst case scenario, it could be 0.
Worst case scenario, it could be 0, okay. On the expenditure side, you'll note the step and column rates that we use for our classified and certificated. You'll see the CalSTRS and PERS benefit rates. You'll note that one of our budget solutions that we started last year was to take approximately 1.85 million a year for 3 years to charge against, transfer those actual pension relief to our arts, music, instructional material discretionary block grants. And so just as a note, year 3 is next year. So that we won't get the benefit of that in 25-26 based on current direction. And then you'll see the impact of our contributions at the bottom with special ed, routine, restricted maintenance. And then again, that salary increase assumption slightly increasing each year, just applying a step increase across the 2 years. And so moving on to the multi-year, I'm sorry, my red arrow gets larger each time. And so I want to point out when I talk about the ADA funding cliff coupled with the decrease in COLA, so going from 3.94% down to 0.76%, also noting that we declined roughly almost 400 students or 1.83% from last year, dropping our main revenue source on the unrestricted side of $250 million this year to $240 million next year. So it's roughly a drop of almost $10 million. And then you'll notice in year 3, because we continue to be a declining enrollment district, even though the COLA is projected at roughly a little over 2%, that COLA does not offset the revenue loss of our declining enrollment, the ADA, the UPP, and still not being at our historic attendance rate of approximately 95%. And so with that loss of revenue from in the 24-25 year, if you drop down to the red box, you'll see our deficit spending will increase from $6 million this year to potentially $19 million next year, $27 million the 3rd year, because we still have to maintain our salary schedule, benefit increases, utilities still increase, those various utility increases. And so that's what you'll see in that deficit spending box, which when you're deficit spending, it reduces your ending fund balance each year. So you'll notice in year 3, ending fund balance could potentially be a negative $3 million. And moving on to the blue box, our revenues currently being slightly over 10%, 5%, and then year 3 would be negative 2%. And so this, when we talk about a $10 million shortfall in revenue, we also talk about we would need budget solutions to offset that loss in revenue. And so if you move to the next slide, this is what it would look like if we were to implement $10 million of ongoing budget solutions in year 2. I stress ongoing, not one time, because ongoing has that compound effect. So a dollar saved in year 1 is $2 in year 2, $3 in year 3. versus a one-time reduction, you're only saving $1 that year. And so with budget solutions, the earlier you start, the more benefit you get. So if you were to do, as an example, $10 million in year 2, while we're still above the 3%, you'll see in year 3, we would be at 3.8%. If we were to actually wait until year 3 to do our reductions, you would need about $18 million, because that's where you lose the benefit of that compounding effect, because you're not gaining the 2 years of savings, you're only getting 1 year of savings. And so that's why you'll see later, as part of this presentation, a resolution to the county. Because we would be negative in year 3, the board would need to approve a resolution with a commitment to do budget solutions. And so we haven't had to do that since 2019, 20, 2021, back when we went qualified. And so this would be something that we would need to do, because as you saw in year 3, based on current projections and factors that are published at the time, we would be negative in year 3. And so the county would expect a resolution to do budget reductions. And so we would have to develop a list to provide to the board as in the future date.
To provide to the County Board of Education?
Yes. The county will review our interims, and our budgets. And so they first have to approve it, and then they send it on to the states. And so any negatives in our multi-year require a resolution and a solutions list to eliminate that negatives reserve impact.
That's the list that we've been working on with the board, and we haven't finished with, but we've already started.
So to summarize, in our multi-year, on the unrestricted side, and we call it the base funding because you have base, and our other main funding on the unrestricted side is our supplemental concentration. But our base funding is what we cover our base programs. And so it covers the majority of our staffing at the school sites, in the office, in the classrooms. It's our IT, it's our HR, it's our administrative supports. It's what pays the bills, utilities. We would need an estimated $10 million of solutions to ensure that we meet a 3% reserve in all 3 years. I do want to point out that we do have sufficient restricted resources, restricted on the other side of the general fund. Those restricted resources have, always come with strings attached. And that's something that we've been working on the last few years, is to be strategic on how we can maximize the use of those restricted resources to help us, because we knew the ADA funding cliff was coming. And so we do have a sufficient balance on the restricted side to help with our programs in the next few years to offset the current economic slowdown. As I mentioned, with the 93% is the official attendance, we're hoping to that 94.22% sticks when we do our P2 reporting. And as I mentioned, the supplemental concentration, carrying those funds over that haven't been projected not to be spent, $12 million. And also the UPP having that ripple effect across our multi-year. And we will continue to monitor the situation at the states, and their next main milestone will be the governor's May revise. And so everyone will be watching those state revenue collections each month. So February, March, not large collection months, but April is the one that everyone watches. It's the property tax, and it's also income tax month. All other funds, you'll see, these are the other funds at the district. No significant changes on any of the funds that you see here. And then next steps to vote on the interim. And we will continue to identify opportunities, making sure that we're being strategic and maximizing our restricted resources to help benefit on the unrestricted side. And as I mentioned, Governor's May revise, we'll be back with updated projections. And March 20th, it will be our next special board workshop on the budget.
Okay, Trustee Kelly, feedback for Ms. Shackelford?
No, none at this time, thanks.
Smithfield?
Could you explain, because I know we have to vote on it later, the, was it, how is it actually on the line? The textbook line, and I see 12, 10, and 9, and then you're asking us something about voting on $800,000 for that line item?
Yeah, so when we began the negotiations with the property, the boundary change, the direction that we received at the time was to use the $4 million to, as a textbook fund. And so in order to make sure that it's used only for textbooks, the board would need to commit those funds. So we've already received the first payment. The board took action. They approved a resolution to commit those funds. While they're in the ending fund balance, they can't be spent until the board takes action to uncommit them.
And what did we decide to spend them on?
Future textbooks.
So
Textbook use.
we're putting that money just to the side until we need future textbooks? I'm confused.
Yes, so at the time, the direction that was given to us by the board, you were part of this discussion back then, was to make sure that we had funds set aside, because back in 2021, there were no funds. They had been swept and
Oh,
there.
I remember
Yes.
that.
And so, at the time, that was the direction, and we've been fortunate since then, because at the time we did the Muir Highlands, we didn't know COVID was coming. We didn't know that we'd be able to do some of these major adoptions with these ESSER funds. And so this is just this following the direction from that original deal that was, or agreement.
So my point is, this was long ago. We went to adopt our language arts that we haven't had for 16 years, and, our last leader calls me the night before the orders due and says, oh, by the way, we didn't keep any money for our curriculum. So there was no money for that curriculum that elementary desperately needed. So we sold this land, and we said at that time, this is perfect because it covered the adoption, but we weren't getting it later. So here's where I'm gonna ask you to come in, Matt, so I can understand what, Martha. Did you just raise your hand?
Well, I was just gonna say, we didn't sell the land. It was that,
We sold the land.
no, it was that the kids belonged to the boundary of San Marcos.
Right.
The land
We gave
wasn't
that
ours.
To
We-
San
We
Marcos.
re-
It was our land, but we changed the.
Really?
The boundary line.
Okay, so anyway, so we said that at the time because we
Yes.
needed to adopt
Correct.
lots of things,
Correct.
and we have. So why are we still keeping it?
You
in-
don't have to keep it there. It's simply there as a holding place. The board can officially act and put that money anywhere they like.
So that is for both payments?
Correct.
Yes.
I have a question.
That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
On that, I have a question on that.
Sure.
Amy, the way that you had worded it was that we could park it there, but if at a later date we choose to use it on something else, we could unpark it.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, the direction, the concern was that money would get swept again. And so in order for staff not to sweep it, we did what's called committed. So that way the board has to take action to put it in, and the board has to take action to take it out. So that gives them the reassurance that that money's not going to disappear. That's a
But
difference
we can
between
use it
committed.
For something.
Anything you like.
You would have to
It's
take
a
action
long
to
money, but
uncommit
We
it.
could use it if.
Yeah.
Because we've done all our adoptions.
Yes.
Okay, thank you
Yes.
for that.
And that was part of the agreement many years ago, was that the board wanted to have flexibility, but they wanted to have some level
Right.
of assurance that had we not received extra money, you always had money for textbooks.
Yeah, because originally, when you do land swaps like that, those funds come into developer
Trust
fees.
me, I remember that. That was like a gift to get that call when we're supposed to be ordering, saying, oh, by the way, I forgot to do that, was not.
Yeah.
That was a godsend. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Trustee Vargas?
Yeah, I'm not following up on that. Is there any projections, that we're gonna do major adoptions in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Austin?
I'll have the instructional folks come up, they can speak to it better.
Oh, two of you come up. Good.
Oh, I didn't see you there.
Because we're little people. So we are currently in the process of adopting at middle school, a new history, social studies and English language arts. And we are likely to be looking towards new mathematics curriculum within the next few years, to align with the new, framework.
Perfect.
Other adoptions, mostly,
Will that be
mostly
from the beginning?
textbooks, pardon me?
The math, will it be from, I know we just did in elementary, but from what I'm hearing, it's not quite doing the job.
It depends.
Yeah, so it'll be upon
the new math framework has just been released and being rolled out, so it'll be based on how we go through the new math framework and what needs to come out of the new math framework. So we probably will
We
need,
have it there.
yeah.
You know.
The other place where we will probably need to commit some funds coming is ethnic studies. So we are currently in the process of developing our ethnic studies task force. They have started. And then next year will be our year of writing our course proposals. So we'll be looking at adopting textbooks possibly, or books for our ethnic studies role.
Thank you for that. And Amy, how much did it cost to adopt ELA and science and math altogether? Like just estimates?
Oh, that's history.
Elementary,
Yep.
in the 2 million range.
Yeah,
Per
the major
subject
adoption is
area.
about 2 million.
Yeah.
Per subject area.
And then we have smaller ones, smaller subjects like the secondary level that are
High
not.
school is different because they're smaller
Yeah.
components, but
I
they
think
could
we-
add up.
If I recall, we budget about $2 million a year for secondary textbooks, and then elementary are based on our adoption cycle, which each one, as Dr. Doyle says, costs about $2 million each cycle.
Perfect. Thank you for that. The next question is more on the special education. So Amy, like on here, you demonstrate that we're
Be able to help with that
actually
too.
maybe Amy or somebody.
I'm not gonna help with that. We'll see.
You're projecting that every single year this goes up. How do you calculate that?
So there's the main, like second column and pension increases, there's this, I'll call it the salary scheduled maintenance of that. And it goes up because each year, because like this year as an example, we've had vacancy savings, so you'll see a drop. And so part of the increase next year is that we have to assume that while we had vacancy savings this year, that those positions would be filled next year. Dr. Olmsted could speak to the work that they've been doing on the identification. And so hopefully we can see that increase take a turn so that it's not as dramatic as it's been the last couple of years, or hopefully something happens at the state and federal where they would actually pay their fair share, which they are not doing currently.
And yeah, as we reported before, we're doing a lot of work around our continuum support and our tiered levels of support for students, which are providing more access to students to interventions and resources rather than trying to move them straight to testing for disabilities. And so we've seen a significant decrease this year in referrals for special education because of the work that we're doing with interventions.
Okay, thank you for that.
Trustee Morocco?
No, I'm good.
And I don't have any further questions. Trustee Kelly?
You asked me already. I'm okay, thanks.
Right, so this is an action item now. We
Yes.
have to, I need a motion to approve the second interim budget report and resolution 2419, identifying the budget reductions needed in the 2024-25 school year.
I move that we approve the second interim report
And
and
resolution.
resolution.
Second, it was moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the second interim budget report and resolution 2419, say aye.
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 Any noes? Abstentions? Right, the motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Next is 7B.
Can we do a point of order or whatever I call it?
Yeah.
The poor girl's been sitting here to give her report to us tonight. Everybody else is gone. Can we move her up?
I think we would have to amend the
You
agenda.
just have to make an amendment.
Yeah, so you make a motion to
So I
amend
make
the
a
agenda.
motion to amend the agenda to move,
So
10A,
Sophia
right now,
to.
10A, right?
Yep.
10A to be 7B, and then 7C would be,
7D.
7C would be accept pupil transportation information.
I second.
All right, it was moved by trustee Smithfield, seconded by trustee Morocco that we make the aforementioned adjustments to the agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving that amendment, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, the motion carries 5-0. Welcome, Miss Sophia Jaimes. Welcome, and thank you for your patience.
Sophia, come on up, and we're gonna have the principal of Vista High School, Miss Ratliff, introduce Sophia So thank you for your patience, Principal Ratliff.
Come on, up, Sophia. Well, welcome. As she's walking up, I would just like to introduce our student board member from Vista High School, Miss Sophia James, and we are so proud of her and having her as our representative. She is kind and confident and curious and connected and certainly capable and knowledgeable. She will tell you a little bit more about herself and what's going on at Vista High School, but we're very proud to have her tonight. So take it away.
Thank you. I'd like to say I am not falling asleep right now. I'm pretty good, but I appreciate the motion. So good evening, board members. Sadly, I'm the only student board member, and everyone else joining us today. My name is Sophia Jaimes, and I am the Vista High representative for this school year. I'll try to keep this short, although there's so much to say and so much to share from my 4 years at this amazing school. To begin, my report wouldn't be complete without a moment of reflection and gratitude. In my past 4 years, I've experienced a great amount of change. First, COVID, online school, then there was a mix of both, and then finally we were back. The transition was hard, I know, for many students as well as me, but the endless support and encouragement from friends, family, and teachers made it possible. I quickly became involved with amazing groups on campus, ASB, character leaders, Key Club, and academic team. Each one of these helped to form my personality and my character. They encouraged me to embrace discomfort and change, and I've grown so much in the past few years because of it. I owe so much of it to this community and this school district, so thank you. Now to begin with the actual updates. The continuous progress made with our English Learner program has been remarkable. Vista High has been a considerably large English learner student population, with these students accounting for 15.5% of the total school population. With amazing staff and teacher support, our English learners have been able to progress into higher level courses despite great challenges. I know this feeling pretty well. As a native Spanish speaker and first-generation immigrant, language is both an obstacle and a very useful asset. I am one of the many students receiving a seal of biliteracy, and this opens so many opportunities for students like me. We are recognized for our ability to tackle language barriers and embrace the meshing of culture, and it is something so unique. Another great thing happening in Vista is our new US building. I can speak for many students when I say it's absolutely beautiful. As a senior, I am grateful for the opportunity to enjoy my IB English language course with amazing windows and a very beautiful space. We are still awaiting the completion of our T building, but I am confident that this space will be just as awesome. One more thing we've had recently is our college and career fair with over 30 tables of colleges, employers, and local businesses sharing experiences from their own careers. This is all made possible by Mr. Soderback, who organizes many college and career workshops on campus. Like Soderback, our counselors are also working to support students on campus, especially our seniors. I had the opportunity this year of attending, well, last year technically, of attending the Apply Day, which provided seniors with designated time to seek support from our counseling team, teachers, and staff. It encouraged seniors to begin their applications early and receive much support from so many caring educators. This is all to say, Vista High students are constantly thriving, but it is only made possible by the dedication and labor of our staff. Our wonderful teachers, custodians, bus drivers, behind the scenes faculty, all of our staff make student excellence possible. I have so much to thank them for, and they are a big part of this year's success. Thank you for your time, and go Panthers.
Thank you. So much. All right, now to 7C, which is accept the Pupil Transportation Information PTI Program Study Assessment. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Board President Alvarado, members of the board, Dr. Doyle. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you this evening. And Board Member Smithfield, thank you. I was watching her. She wasn't falling asleep. She needed to get up here and talk.
Learning tomorrow.
Nice job. It's an absolute pleasure in many ways to be asked People Transportation Information PTI to partner with the district. But I think more importantly for you is I feel I have a little bit of an insight with the district I was the Director of Transportation at Poway Unified for 33 years and was your neighbor, and also had the wonderful opportunity to be part of, I believe, two FICMAC reviews in your special education, and I handled the transportation piece of that, and then numerous opportunities to work with your physical staff over the years. And another reason I'm happy to follow Ms. Jimenez is Amy Shackelford is absolutely wonderful. She does a great job presenting, easy to follow, but I never like to follow the budget person. So with that said, let's get started. In September, the district asked kind of for a two-prong assistance program from PTI. The first included providing Director Mangold with assistance in vehicle maintenance. So when we get to the vehicle maintenance section, there's 5 sections to the report. We're a little light in that area, but I connected it to the scope of this project. I just wanted you to know that we were in here earlier and provided input to the district in the area of vehicle maintenance. Up until the morning we came, we had a scope that included looking at the special education, transportation services, routing and methodology. And we spoke to Dr. Doyle that morning, said, you know, Tim, can you just look kind of at the whole thing? It was a pleasure for us to do that. And it made sense, Dr. Doyle, to do that once we got into the routing analysis, which is the deep meat of the report. The report is heavy in findings. Let me apologize up front that it's written more in a deficit model. This is the way our training was through FICMAC for so many years, and we follow their outline. But there's so many good things to talk about, and we kicked that off in the first part of the report with the budget and finance piece. But the specific scope sections are we're just centered on special education routing and home to school general ed routing, the mix of the two, and the highlights is what we touch upon tonight. When you look at the findings specifically, again, they're very heavy, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end on any of those recommendations. The report is separated into 5 major sections: transportation funding and finance, routing and scheduling, staffing. We touch upon vehicle maintenance, fleet and facilities as they relate to the above 2, and the driver training and safety sections. So in the area of funding and finance, first of all, just there's about 3 or 4 paragraphs that make for good late night reading and a history of transportation funding. Don't even try to make sense of the fact, because the district next door to you may receive substantially more money under the local control funding formula, or may receive, which is actually the case in the 3 districts through here, a lot less than you. It all has to do with historical figures and how much transportation the district was doing way back in the 80s. What is important to note, though, is the district received a little over 1.6 million in state roll-in under the calculator factor for the local control funding formula. More important than that, I never thought I'd see in my 44 years, is that the state legislature passed and married into Ed Code a 60% enhancement funding. I hope we can hang on to that. That is a huge adrenaline shot into the arm for pupil transportation that has historically been so sorely underfunded. The additional funding for Vista Unified in the 22-23 school year amounts to over 1.5 million. That is something to celebrate right there. The district does not charge fees for pupil transportation. I commend you for that. That's a hard decision to make because it's a non-mandated area, but we put that in there because there's no identification of local funding. It's the only reason that it's there. And then we put in, it seems out of place, I know, but it hit the funding and finance section, is that the district did a dramatic move, and I commend you for it. And you're going to see the benefits of that, I know, in the future by, I think there's an MOU in place currently to move your drivers to an 8-hour per day contract, which is huge in transportation. There are no specific recommendations in there. And this is so unusual for us in PTI because under the 60% enhanced funding, we find in most of our studies in the last year and a half that districts have things buried, not intentionally, but related to pupil transportation that are not tracked in under function 3600. That was not the case in Vista. So to Ms. Shackelford and her staff, Director Mangold and others involved, nice job there. Routing and scheduling. I'm talking fast because I'm going to slow up here. District's administrative regulation, 3541 does not articulate a zone of service or a zone of non-service. There's nothing wrong with that. I only bring that in there because you don't articulate it for the community. There's no requirement that you do, and it could be the board's desire historically. Because I remember this from prior, being here prior, it allows the board some flexibility to address issues case by case, and that can be both a blessing and not a blessing. So it's a finding that we just point out to you to consider is all. The school bill schedule, I think, would reduce operational expenses and transportation. But I think really what drives this recommendation here isn't so much the operational expense reduction as it is getting services back for kids under routes that are temporarily suspended. We'll talk more about that here. You have approximately 580 general education students transported on 4 district large bus routes, and another 460 special education students on 29 or so routes. Not enough routes moving because you have additional students on a third-party contractor as well. So let's talk about those recommendations here a little bit. We're recommending that the board consider adjusting and moving an elementary bell time to 7:45 a.m. That's a highly controversial issue. Your district is not so unusual than many others where you have far less than 30–40% of your students being transported. Nonetheless, our job is to point out the advantages of doing so. The most costly expense within a transportation budget is the cost to operate that bus. So when you make the decision to operate that bus, you want to get as much bang for that buck as you can. The only way to do that, sadly, is to get as many runs. So think of a route equating to a bus and a driver. Runs equate to a school. So if you can get that bus to support a minimum of 2 schools in a unified district, and before the advent of secondary start time, we could easily, in some cases, do 3 turnarounds. So that single bus is being used up to 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the afternoon, which gives you a cadre of large buses in a unified district for that very much needed athletic moves, because you have the large bus and the driver in place. That's the reasoning behind that. I know the challenges though. But if you look at the second bullet point, adopt a 15-minute window time for drop off and pickup of special education students. What is a bit unique currently in Vista is that when that bus arrives, be it, I doubt that it's getting there 30 minutes early, but be it 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, or 5, within 15 minutes, that driver is sitting at that site in most cases for a staff member to come out to assist those students that you transport to that site that need assistance navigating onto the campus. And what that's preventing transportation from doing and creating additional stress right now is, I know when I was in Poway, I could use that 15 minutes to get a head start on the next round. So when you're debating the challenge of a staggered bell schedule, you can cheat a little if you use that 15-minute drop period to get that bus moving more quickly. You're nodding your head, you follow where I'm going there. You can kind of split the baby in half. Evaluate the need for more special ed buses. I think that's pretty evident. Consider using non-school bus vehicles to transport more SPED students. 10 years ago, we would have never suggested it's to a school board or a cabinet, but here's the fact of the matter. You have students to move and you've suspended transportation for a lot of those students who may not be mandated, but very much need that bus. The ed code is written in a fashion that allows you to transport up to 9 students plus the driver for a total of 10. Vista has begun that process already. I believe there's 3 vans out there doing that. And that van is a lot less costly, although hard to get. It's a lot less costly than a school bus. And there's going to be a huge advantage to fulfill that Class C or that driver who's licensed, like most of you probably, to get them into an employment situation, get them into a paid status, while Director Mangold and her staff are training them, because that training process is not fast. And then clearly state in your transportation services areas, your distance for service or non-service if you so choose to do that. Continuing. In routing and scheduling, I told you this one's a little meaty. Most district non-public placement SPED students are currently transported by external third-party provider. You have no concerns over the competitive bid that went out, and you're using an industry strong provider. And we're not here necessarily to talk about them, but the cost to put upwards to 29, I understand that number's coming down already since we've been here, but the cost to put that number of students, when many of them could be in a Vista yellow school bus or a 9 passenger van, there'd be a tremendous savings there. And I know that's what you want to do. I would suggest to you, coming out of post-COVID, that the need for a third-party provider will always be there for those instances where you have 1 or 2 children going well outside the district's geographic boundary, or students in transition, foster youth, et cetera. But the cost of that contract is high when we did the cost per student analysis. Next. The next area is staffing. Additional school bus drivers required to meet a routing request. So you can have all the buses in the world, and you could follow, an employment trend to bring drivers into a training, paid training situation, which you're currently doing. But you're going to need the vehicles in which to do that with. Vista is not unusual in both their staffing needs, but we're going to be talking about the fleet needs as well. You're flush on buses, they're aging. You're flush on buses, but like most districts, you have them in the area where you don't need as many of them, and that's the large bus, which generally suffices for general ed over the sped. And I got a little ahead of myself there. I just wanted to connect those dots. The vehicle maintenance department would benefit from a direct supervisor. That's somewhat been a more recent historical discovery here in Vista. I don't know the internal workings for that. It probably has a lot to do with budget, but your fleet, we're talking here, this study dealt with routing and scheduling on the school bus, but you have more than just a school bus out there to maintain. You have a lot of valuable support fleet. The better you take care of that, preventative maintenance schedules, et cetera, and someone coordinating that, that's a big job out there. So we bring that to your attention. Use of non-school bus drivers to drive small groups of sped students as a strategy I've mentioned. And threw this in here. You would have thought it would have been buried, but I'm just passionate about it. There's probably no other position in the district that represents the district better in Vista than that school bus on the public street, but also that driver that's looked at as a professional and identified as a Vista Unified School District driver. It'll do you a lot of good for very low investment. So obviously the recommendations in this area ensure a department shift and schedules provide that coverage. Create a vehicle maintenance supervisor is a strong suggestion. Create a non-school bus vehicle driver position. That's a suggestion. Currently, you're bringing him into paid status as a school bus a driver in training. I have that title wrong there, but you might consider creating a van driver position. They're employed in that position. They're doing the exact same thing. They're driving students for you AM and PM and possibly midday, but then they're in training in evenings and midday to become a school bus driver. Again, you're well on your way there. And then provide uniforms for the staff. Dr. Doyle? Vehicle maintenance, fleet and facilities. Again, we went deeper in this area prior, but I wanted to connect these. The board needs to hear that you have a long history here. I went back 10 years. You have a long history of a satisfactory CHP school bus inspection record and terminal inspection of records, which is so much more than just look at the yellow school bus and the driving records and your drug and alcohol and many other areas. So you can get 2 ratings. You can get unsatisfactory, you can get satisfactory. You do not want unsatisfactory because a couple of those and Dr. Doyle's in trouble. Someone will be bailing him out. No joke. Some staff in the shop are using up to 8 hours to perform a vehicle safety check. And this is getting into the weeds, but it's a very important. Staff probably is blending in a preventative maintenance schedule with a 3,000 mile, 45-day check. That 3,000 mile, 45-day check is unique to a school bus, and there's reasons for that. You want that, but that bus is in the shop constantly. You should turn those schedules around very quick. If you're blending in a preventative maintenance schedule of that, and think of that on your car, like the 10,000 mile check, the 50,000, the 100,000, that's gonna slow that check down. The reason it's in the top recommendations here is because the transportation staff, even if they have the drivers, they're already short on buses. So when that bus is in the shop for a full day for that purpose, even though other items might be getting done, it's a resource that you don't have access to. So if you can slow that up, and you very well can, and still have a very robust vehicle maintenance program by scheduling the preventative maintenance schedules separately. So we're recommending, lost my place there for a second. This is often a shop function. Oh, the electronic pads for pre-tripping, GPS identification, student tracking, which we'll talk about in a moment. The repair and maintenance of those typically falls, it's an accessory to the bus. And those items normally get handled by the shop. Currently, we just noted that's bogging down and taking up valuable time of the operations team from other things they need to be doing. So we recommend moving that over where we see it most often with the vehicle maintenance team. So on the recommendations, we talked about the separation of the 45-day bus schedule, get it down to a couple of hours. That way a bus is only off the road in the AM or the PM. Vehicle maintenance should manage the aftermarket accessories on everything that includes the Zonar tablets. Ensure non-school bus vehicles are maintained to bus standards. So what are we talking about there? And that is nothing requires the district, but in that passenger van that we're now suggesting you make full use of, whether you have a student on a yellow bus where it's mandated or you're moving them in a passenger vehicle, you hold that vehicle to the same standard. So in essence, you take that passenger van and you put it on the 3,000 mile, 45-day inspection. And I'm going to connect the issue of may need to lease buses to address impacts in the EV structure here later in the presentation. Continuing in this area, the district has received 16 new electric buses. I hope I have our data correct here, for a total of 23 on site. The charging infrastructure is not complete and may take up over 1 year for completion. This is no fault of staff. I mean, I remember when I was your neighbor to the south, getting my first 20 buses, and I actually applied for the infrastructure 6 months in advance, and that infrastructure, the buses were still to me about 4 months before the infrastructure became live. What's happening as we go into the third and fourth year, some very robust bus replacement programs in the state, and that's good. The negative side is the utility partners with the district, typically at no cost. You can't argue that, but you're going to be on their timeline. Then the district usually hires an outside consultant that helps them manage the on-district infrastructure, select the chargers for the buses, etc. All that has to marry together, but it's dependent upon the utility company. Right now, we're helping clients apply immediately. We're looking at 1 to 1.5 years away. And there's not a lot the district can do about that except for keep pressure on SDG&E and make sure you're ready to move when they're ready to move. So hence we talk about the need that the board may have to consider the rental of buses in the near future. And as well, I remember speaking to the board a decade ago about the deteriorating condition on the CNG infrastructure out there, and the board authorized, and there was some modernization done. You don't want to put a lot of money. You really don't want to put any money into that because that alternative fuel is going away. However, you may consider not so aggressively shutting off CNG if you can get the San Diego Air Pollution Control District to give you some leadway. And I have no idea if they will or won't, but you're not the only one in this leadway, that when that new bus comes in, that old bus doesn't have to immediately head for crushing in order for the district to be able to get its funding for the new bus, which came out of your pocket, I think, on your grant initially. And that's a big if there. Next. Driver training and safety. School bus driver training is highly regulated. I'm sure you know a lot about that. The district is generally in compliance with school bus safety requirements. You're probably getting stuck on generally. I don't want you to panic about that. It's connected to general education students must receive school transportation safety compliance instruction in a documented format. It can be electronically, it can be in hard copy, but there's another area of huge concern for us, and that is the department's in a reactionary mode when it comes to gen ed transportation scheduling. And by that, you have one of the industry's most robust transportation routing softwares out there, TransFinder. It can project and optimize, consolidate, but you got to know what you're dealing with before you can have it do that. The software is new to the department. The department simply needs additional training on that. But how it connects here is right now in general ed, you just send that bus out at the beginning of the year, you look to see where the kid's from, then you identify them. If there's an emergency situation, you don't necessarily know who's on the bus. So again, a two-prong factor there is one, a bus pass system. That doesn't mean charging the student for the bus pass. It just means that they have a bus pass with an RFID tag in it that they can swipe, so you know when the child's on and off the bus. But the transportation team will know where their volume is coming from if they're applying for that pass well in advance. We would try to start that when I was your neighbor to the south, before the end of the prior school year and into early summer. So that will help Director Mangold and her staff know where to move the resources, which can become an efficiency issue and possibly gain you more seats where you need them. So on the recommendation side, where the general education students register for transportation in compliance with the ed code, update and expand school bus safety information to assure it is distributed to all parents and students. And I skipped something in there I want to go back to. I was just trying to give you as much time for questions and not listening to me. And that is the need for a parent communication document in the area of special ed. And two items in that area. Sometimes the transportation staff, not intentionally, but is left out of the decision-making process when the district needs to expand a special ed program. And I'm sure it becomes a facilities issue, and we sit down and often though there's more than one facility that can be looked at. But if transportation is part of that discussion, just as a stakeholder highly involved, they can give the benefits of school site A over school site C, because maybe it's more generally located in the district, it's not buried into a neighborhood, et cetera. So the other item was, we saw no evidence of a hard copy student and parent informational booklet or communication for the special ed student. Again, no requirement for such, but it's great servicing. But two, it's going to reduce the amount of phone calls and questions and what have you that your special ed parents have, especially when they're new and they don't know what to do when their child's not going to school, or if the bus is late, or what have you. It also directs them on who to call. Transportation department, school site, what have you. I did that quickly, Dr. Doyle.
Trustee Smithfield, questions, discussion?
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Trustee Vargas?
No questions, thank you.
Trustee Morocco?
I'm good, thank you.
Trustee Kelly?
Thanks. I did have a couple questions. One was back on the slide that is discussing routing and scheduling, about the third or fourth slide into the presentation. Sorry, they don't have numbers. The idea of stating transportation service areas, I wanted to ask for clarification if that's for general education or all transportation routes.
That's a very good question, and specific to general education, because that service is, and in Vista it is too. There is historical data they use in the department of where they provide service and where they don't provide service. But it's specific for general education because not every child's gonna choose to ride the bus.
Thanks. And then the second question I had was about the bus pass system that you're proposing and tracking. Are there any parental concerns about privacy related to that data?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually dealt with that when I was your neighbor. So it's the bus pass that has the RFID stripe in it. So in other words, the And Z pass in your case with Zonar, that's the technology you have that reads the pass, is reading the pass, not tracking the student. And it's only tracking the pass when that pass scans on the bus, then scans off the bus. Now, presumably, we hope that pass is attached to the right student for purposes of knowing who's writing and not writing. But communicating that, I think to your point, to your parent population is a top priority when you're rolling it out.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for your presentation.
Sure, thank you.
Can I get a motion to accept the PTI report for pupil transportation information program study assessment?
So moved.
Second,
Moved by trustee Vargas, seconded by trustee Kelly. Any further discussion about this program study assessment? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of accepting this study assessment, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is reports from school-related organizations. First is Vista Teachers Association.
Good evening, Board of Education, Dr. Doyle. Can't say hello to the student board members and community. It is disheartening that the district has only moved 0.4% on salary and has remained at the addition of a $400 to our benefit cap. All the while knowing that we have the absolute worst benefit package in the surrounding districts. I myself pay $800 a month for my benefits. To our hardworking members, it feels like a slap in the face. It does not make us feel valued, respected, or supported. It is your job to keep Vista competitive. And here's what some of the other districts along the 78 corridor settled for the 2023-2024 school year. Ramona was 5.5 salary increase on schedule. They also got a 3% off schedule, and the district pays for 85% of their benefit package, whichever one they choose. Escondido Elementary, a 5% salary increase and a 0.5% increase to benefits. The district pays about $14,500 towards their benefits. San Marcos, 4.25% salary increase. And basically the district pays 88% of the Kaiser plan and their benefit caps, they have a tiered system. $23,942 for the family plan, $17,254 for a two-party plan, and $9,287 for a single party plan. Oceanside, a 5% increase with benefits fully paid this year. And for next year, the 2024-2025 school year, they have already settled for a 1% salary increase, and then they will have to pay $100 for insurance if they have dependents. Here in Vista Unified, the offer right now on the table is 3.4 to salary, and an addition of a $400 to the benefit cap. And that would make the district's contribution to our benefits $12,400. Stop playing with our members' livelihood and direct the superintendent, who received an 18% salary increase in the past 2 years. Like our teachers in the past 2 years got 9.57%. And put a deal on the table that our members would pass. And that demonstrates that you value and respect the educators that have been on the front lines of education. We all got Vista through COVID. Our educators did as well. And stop playing these negotiation games because it's playing with our teachers' lives. Last time I was here and I said, we have homeless teachers. We have teachers who are selling their plasma to make ends meet. We have teachers who are doubling up or living in campers. I myself for a while had to live in a shed. We are facing some of the same issues that our students are. And we have the adult profile. If the adults aren't feeling supported, how can they live up to this adult profile? We all are here for the students as well. We want to live in the communities that we serve. We want to be able to put food on our tables, and we want to be able to provide for our families. There's many teachers who don't have food at the end of the month. So please, and thank you very much.
Next is, 8B, California School Employees Association.
Good evening, board members, superintendent, cabinet members, and CSEA brothers, sisters, and siblings of Vista Unified Chapter 389. Tonight's report will focus on the LCAP as we are in the middle of planning, getting feedback and so forth. Classified job families and job classifications are instrumental in helping the district meet its goals. We are the backbone of our schools and provide services that are essential to creating a safe environment that is conducive to learning. So I'd like to take a moment to highlight some of these job families and job classifications, starting with instructional assistants. Instructional assistants are highly qualified and provide valuable services by assisting teachers and other certificated personnel in instructing reading, writing, and math. Most instructional assistants work directly with students and provide support to students who need modified instruction, especially those with disabilities. Nutrition services. Classified employees working in food service are highly trained to ensure that safe serve standards are met pursuant to the Health and Safety Code. Nutrition services are very important and offer all students better opportunities to learn in school. Studies have shown that at nutritional risk students have lower attendance, more tardiness, anxiety, and aggression. Transportation. School buses are the safest way for many students to get to school on a daily basis. It's safer than riding in a personal car, bicycling, or walking to school. And board, you've made it a priority to provide transportation to general education students. Home to school transportation may afford some parents the ability to work. The benefits of the school bus are evident, but the environment of the bus might need improvement. And this is why transportation assistants are also important. Studies have shown that what happens on the bus affects students' behavior at home and in school. Information technology. Information technology professionals ensures that computers and their networks operate smoothly and efficiently to enable student learning. They also ensure that networks are used in accordance with the district's uniform policies and protocols related to the transmission of student information. Thanks to them, board meetings can be broadcast live to our community. Maintenance and operations. District employment, maintenance and operations, and skilled trade workers are certified, licensed, and complied with all state mandated requirements. They keep school facilities in good repair, clean, safe, and functional. School facilities in good repair help student performance and encourage parental involvement. Studies show test scores improve as school conditions improve. Schools in good repair have lower absenteeism and dropout rates. All of these professions require training in order to provide the necessary skills for their role. And this is where the LCAP comes into play. Funding for trainings and professional development opportunities need to be a priority. CSEA will ensure that we provide the feedback and suggest ways to collaborate with the district. And I'll give you an example. The association, CSEA Association, provides annual trainings for paraeducators, as well as they host the Maintenance and Operations Academy that one of our speakers, Robert Johnson, has attended. He, however, had to pay for his own training to go. So we need your support to really advocate for us, to make it a priority that in the LCAP, there's funding for training and professional development for all of us, for all the job classifications and job families. Investing in trainings and professional development opportunities is one way to retain classified employees. And that's because we feel valued when we see that. We feel like we are seen and cared for. And in return, the district gets highly skilled individuals who report to their school site or department happy. So it's a win-win situation. So next month, in our report, I would like to continue to highlight the rest of the job classifications and job families, because we feel it's important that you, board, understand what makes up the classified staff of Vista Unified. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is 8C, District English Learner Advisory Committee, DLAC.
Buenas tardes, estimados miembros de la mesa directiva. Como primer punto, DILA realizó una reunión oficial el lunes 26 de febrero. En esa reunión se completaron 2 tareas y la primera tarea número 3, el establecimiento de programas, metas y objetivos del distrito para programas y servicios para estudiantes aprendientes de inglés. La tarea número 6, el desarrollo de un plan para asegurar el cumplimiento de los requisitos aplicables de maestros y asistentes de maestros.
Good evening, esteemed board members. As a first point, DLAC conducted an official meeting on Monday, February 26th. In this meeting, 2 tasks were completed. Task number 3, establishment of district programs, goals, and objectives for programs and services for English language learners. Task number 6, development of a plan to ensure compliance with any applicable teacher and/or teacher aid requirements.
Con respecto a estas tareas, DILA quisiera respetuosamente recomendar. Primera recomendación, se le dé más oportunidades a los padres para ser informados acerca de los programas de adquisición del lenguaje que están disponibles en el distrito. Segunda recomendación, asegurar que los materiales didácticos en español que usan los estudiantes incluyan lenguaje auténtico y correcto, es decir, traducido por los traductores del distrito. Tercera recomendación, que los aprendientes de inglés que no estén en clases de doble inmersión también tengan acceso a los mismos materiales que tienen los estudiantes de doble inmersión.
Based on these tasks, DLAC would like to respectfully recommend that our first recommendation, more opportunities be given for parents to be informed of the different language acquisition programs that are available in Vista Unified. Our second recommendation is to ensure that Spanish instructional materials being used with students include authentic and correct language, that is to say, translated by our translation and interpretation department. And our third recommendation is that English language learners that are not in dual language immersion classes also have access to the same instructional materials.
La próxima junta oficial de DILAC se llevará a cabo el lunes 25 de marzo a las 6 de la tarde en el BIC. Y las tareas de esta junta incluirán la tarea número 2, que es la presentación de representantes escolares sobre la evaluación de sus necesidades. Y la tarea número 7, la revisión de LCAP.
The next official DLAC meeting will be held on Monday, March 25th at 6 p.m. at the VIC. Tasks for this meeting will include task number 2, presentations by school representatives regarding their needs assessment, and task number 7, the LCAP review.
Thank you. Thank you to our presenters from the school-related organizations. Dr. Doyle, do our students in elementary school that have benchmark advanced in, say, a mainstream class or structured immersion have access to benchmark adelante?
They could, Rafa, you could come up if you want to
Like
help.
on their tablet,
Yeah.
on their whatever device they have?
So these are students, just to be clear, these are students that are not in the DLI program. That's
Not
what
in the
you're asking.
DLI program, just, on their platform, they have a
They have access to
platform
the Spanish
to
version.
adelante.
Good evening. So the access is there for our students. However, the programs are not the same. So it's not a translation from English to Spanish. So they're separate, and so the translation would not, or the Spanish materials wouldn't necessarily help 100% into the to the English.
Some are.
Okay.
Some are the same. I have newcomers in my class that I like to front load them sometimes, and I give them access to that. So maybe we just need some more information for parents on how they can access at least the elementary school, language arts curriculum.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And some stories are the same, some are not, because direct translations don't always work. But they're a great tool for
Yeah.
families who want to get the content, for their students, so.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
perhaps we can do in a future, a presentation on the program for newcomers. Because
We
you are
do
supporting
have, so,
newcomers with that.
exactly, so our ELD resource teachers do have the access to the materials in Spanish, but you know, that. to support
Right,
the
and maybe it
students.
doesn't even have to be a newcomer, but it's just
Yeah.
like answering
Yeah.
what the DLAC committee wanted was access to, the curriculum that students in dual immersion have, at least in elementary school, and what we'll have in middle school.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is 9A board member report out. So we'll start with trustee Vargas.
We're in March, so. In a minute. We attended the NAACP luncheon a couple weeks ago, so we shout out to our high school teams that were well represented from all of our high schools there. That's the main major event. Got a couple sets scheduled in the coming days. Nothing major to report on.
Trustee Morocco.
Yeah, I've just kind of been doing some school visits. I've been doing the bond meetings and, doing the tour. Yeah, I've seen building T, which has just come along beautifully. You know, just, I've been going to Vista High occasionally, spending some time there. But yeah, nothing major to report out, just, committees and stuff.
Trustee Kelly.
Thank you, President Alvarado. I just have two items of note. One was the Cal SSD meeting that you and I had the opportunity to attend on March 1st. That was in Sacramento, and the SSD is the suburban school districts. We had a day of hearing directly from representatives from the Legislative Analysis Office, as well as the Governor's Office. It was very insightful, very helpful for us to understand where the state is with its budget and what the likely outcomes might be for our budget. And somewhat related to that, my other item to share is that I participated in the California School Board Association Legislative Advocacy Week. I was on a Zoom call the other day with our state assembly member, Lori Davies, advocating for protection of Prop 98, our base funding, and also chiming in on some the AB 247, which is a bill to have a school facilities bond for the state. So those are my big reports from this last month.
Trustee Smithfield.
I attended the community school meeting, which is always so wonderful, and the programs we're bringing in get me very excited for what they're doing for the kids. And I have to tell you that the toothbrushing one, when I lived in, I didn't live, I taught in Thermal. I'm not sure if you've ever been there, but they were all migrant kids and nobody had dental health. And we had that program just like that, and such a life-changing difference. So there were a few people that the other person too, and I was like, oh, I'm so old, the art. Oh, my goodness. So some great things happening there. DLI, Madison is getting ready, and even Roosevelt for the following year is already planning how they're gonna welcome and get together. Now that I hope we got them all their information that they need of how many they're getting and all that stuff. Okay. And then the facilities, Katrina, has been joining us. Vista High is almost done, and they're almost ready to move into building T. So S and T are done, finishing up a few things. It's beautiful, it's impressive. Grace is a miracle worker. Her and her team have kept this on. They ask the right questions. They are just unbelievable. And then, of course, the big excitement for me is going forward with the Beaubier, which is getting ready for that first phase to bring everything down. So that's exciting. And the last thing that I did, as you did too, we went to the Rising Star.
Yep.
And of course, that's always such a wonderful thing to honor our students, especially the ones that had some things to overcome. Yeah. And they keep it. So that's it. Hope I'm not getting into too many things that I shouldn't.
Yeah, and I just want to add on to I attended with trustee Kelly, the California Suburban School Board Association meeting, and besides folks from the governor's office and the LAO, we had speakers from FIGMAT there, and then a representative, the education representative from Speaker Rivas's office, that's the leader of the assembly. And so it wasn't that just we were listening, we were also advocating for the things that we were hoping that, you know, wouldn't be on the chopping block. And we advocated very heavily for, you know, the community schools money that has been awarded, that it not be taken back for these 5-year grants, because what was on the chopping block is any school money allocated for community schools, but that had not been awarded. So we were able to really talk about the needs that we have as a school district, and really personalize it and give them anecdotes and such. So I thought that was like time well spent, because it was, you know, speaker after speaker after speaker. And it's insightful to see kind of like the maneuvering between all the offices and how, you know, how that's gonna pan out. I hope, you know, that everyone does what they need to do to protect education as much as they can in the context of this budget deficit here in the state. So, and I attended the NAACP luncheon, and we had representatives from the Black student unions, from all of our high schools, even our continuation high schools. And yesterday I also got a chance to share with Rachel Belden, Chamber of Commerce, some of the great programs and initiatives that Vista Unified has been able to put forward. So that will eventually air in about a month, I think. So I think it's good to share with the community what's happening. If people don't have children in the district and they don't receive our program or our newsletter, they're not gonna know. So that's what I was up to. Thank you, guys. All right, next on the agenda would be, I guess this would be 10A now, or do we leave it as 10B?
It's fine, because we did 10 people.
Okay, 10B, the Guided Language Acquisition Design GLAD Program Update.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes. All right, we come back at 9:07.
Julie, did you want to ask something? Before you take a break?
This is when I'm going to step off. It's midnight here, and so I need to say goodnight. I'll follow up tomorrow.
Is it hot in here? Does it feel so hot?
I felt warm before. Okay, now.
Oh, it's 74? That's not good for that. No, 74 is not good. 71 or 70 is comfortable.
I'm 72. 72.
But 74 is a bit too much.
Yeah.
74 is heat, 72 is just right.
74 is like hot yoga.
And that was on. Oh my God. I got these. Skills. Have you ever had them?
Are those ones that melt in your mouth when you pop them in?
Yeah, they're freeze-dried Skittles.
My son loves them.
Oh my God. They're like.
They rip off the top of my mouth when I try it.
Yeah, they can do that.
Julie has stepped out. All right.
Okay. We're back. 10B, guided language acquisition design program update.
Good evening, board members. So tonight I'm here to present an update, kind of where we've been and where we're headed with our guided language acquisition design program. So just a review that Project GLAD is based in 30+ years of research. It's been around that long. It's an effective instructional model for both integrated and designated ELD, and it's very grounded in research and standards. Next slide. Really, the purpose is to support our English language learners to improve the academic outcomes for our students through both integrated English language development, but also designated ELD it can be used for as well. Next slide. So we've had a series of different training opportunities so far in the district. One is what we call exposure. So you haven't actually gone through formal training, but we may have people in the district who have been trained or exposed to GLAD, and they're doing kind of professional development on site, some make and take it workshops, things like that. So most teachers in Vista have been exposed to GLAD somehow. And then we have this process of actually having GLAD certified teachers. And these go through formal GLAD certification training. It's 2 days of research and theory and 4 days of watching a demonstration of GLAD and having people watch you as well. And then we have another program that we're starting this year too, where we actually are sending people to become GLAD certified trainers. So you have certified teachers once you go through the training, but then we can also certify people to become trainers for us so we don't have to go out of house and we can bring it in-house. So I'll talk about that more in just a second. Next slide. As a reminder, Project GLAD provides access to grade level standards. It removes barriers for our English learners and incorporates culturally responsive practices to support the needs of our students. So it's really driven and supports our equity board policy. It supports universal design for learning, our MTSS framework, and then the work we're doing around our equity walks and cultural proficiency. Next slide. Just as a reminder, I'm not going to read all of this, but this is the breakdown of what part 1 and part 2 are as you go through the 2-day workshop. And the next slide is the 4-day workshop. So really getting that hands-on experience, debriefing what you're seeing, and then getting some coaching and feedback as well. Next slide. And so by the end of 2029, we have a goal of making sure that all of our elementary teachers who have rostered classrooms have GLAD certification. So through that, there's the part 1 that they'll go through, teachers try it out, and then they go through part 2 to finish it. Next slide. And then we also are implementing the GLAD certification training. And so through this school year, part 1 and part 2 have been done by San Diego County Office of Education or Orange County Department of Education. We do have one of our in-house people who is a fully certified trainer. We hired him this year. He has been co-training with either San Diego County Office of Ed or Orange County Department of Ed, because to do the training, you have to have 2 certified trainers. So we still need to bring in the outside people to help us with the training. In 2025, we are currently onboarding 4 in-house trainers. And so by 2025, we can bring it all in-house. Next slide. And this is just our delivery model. It works with focus and motivation, input charts, guided oral practice for students. So you'll hear a lot of oral language development if you're observing a GLAD lesson. lots of reading and writing activities, lots of extension and integration into other subject areas, and lots of feedback and assessments that happen with it. The way we've been funding this is we did originally receive a grant through the multilingual project. Vista received $30,000 to help support the start of Project GLAD. And then we continue to fund it through our Title III funds. And these are accomplishments over the last few years. I'll just highlight a few. All of our ELD resource teachers have been GLAD certified. The $30,000 grant was a huge win for us back then. And then just the relationships we have with San Diego County Office of Ed and Orange County Department of Ed to help us scale this up. Next slide. In 22-23, we started our training with our highest need schools that have our most of our English learners. And so really starting our training there, making sure we had full-time people to help support it. And then also introducing GLAD and Espanol for our DLI sets as well. Next slide. This year, we continue to expand our training at more of our high need schools. And then we also brought on Roosevelt, Madison, and Rancho Buena Vista have been participating this year as well. As we look forward, we want to continue to expand this and really, really emphasize how dual language, as you heard our student board members speak tonight, is so important to the economic growth of our students. And being able to get that seal of biliteracy at the completion of their 12th grade year. Super exciting. Next slide. So this is our plan for elementary how we can continue to scale. So you'll see where we're at with our schools. Grapevine, 100% of teachers have been trained. Beaubier, 95%. Vista Academy of Performing Arts, we're at 100%. Foothill Oak, about 60%. And with this, we continue to train our administrators along the way too. Next slide. So as we continue to scale elementary, you'll see kind of our progress that we plan to do to onboard teams that, kind of school by school over the next 5 years so we can get all teachers trained. Next slide. For secondary, this is what it's been looking like for the past 3 years. And so really in the secondary level, we're focusing on core content teachers. So English language arts, math, social studies, and science to start with for the first 5 years. Next slide. And you'll see how it scales out over those next 5 years, continuing to onboard all of our schools and then maintaining as we continue to go. So the maintain factor is in there as well. Next slide. And that is my update. Yes, ma'am.
So the ELD, we have on I don't know what page, 21, 22. 100% of the ELD teachers were trained. Were they all trained by 5 days from the county? Or did we? Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. And then timeline for elementary is until 29. Do you have timeline for middle school and high school?
Same. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That was the second set.
Right there.
It's just lots of,
I didn't see
yeah.
that it said 29. And then last one, at least in the beginning, I think once you're going in the curriculum, it eases up, but glad not only the training is intense, but the planning
Yes.
is above and beyond. Way more hours than we have to add more hours to the day, and I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
Plus all the resources. So what are we doing to help our teachers?
So some pretty neat things that I've seen that different schools are doing, and we'll make sure we're sharing with all of the schools. So in kind of every school site has kind of made a teacher PD collaboration room at the elementary levels. And in those rooms, they're actually leaving charts out for teachers to take that are already kind of done. They have a lot of make and take it where you just grab and go with your lesson that you need. So resource teachers are helping build those, or during grade level collaboration time, one grade level might build one and then leave it up for other grade levels to use.
So I'm gonna stop you there because you and I had a conversation a little while back when we were kind of first here. And my concerns about where we were taking GLAD and how it was going. And I mentioned to you, because at the time there was questions, I don't know, they were unsure of charts, what goes on the charts and everything. And I was saying, well, the RTs were making the chart and you looked at me and you said, they're supposed to be doing their own charts. So my question when you say that to me is if I'm teaching something and somebody else is making the chart, it's not my chart, therefore my room doesn't own it.
Yeah.
Unless the grade level got together to plan it, right, and come up with all their chants and their sentence pattern things, so.
So when I say charts, they're not fully drawn out yet or anything like that. They're doing more of the topics on them and having the papers ready to go. So that's
like the
the,
grade level,
Correct.
and then they
Yep.
can come in
Yep.
and figure that
Yeah.
out.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so besides having it done in those rooms where they could go, like. That would be fine if it was gonna be done for every unit and everything and all the charts for everything. But I'm sure it's not, and I think I know what school you're talking about, because I went and visited that. But not all schools do that.
Right. So there's more that
So
we
the
need to
teachers
do.
are crying,
Yeah.
but it's a lot,
Okay.
so
Noted.
you're gonna fix that.
I will help.
Thank you.
It is a lot of work.
My, kind of concern looking at this, I love glad I got to go to the training, when I went back to school for an ELD certificate, and it was just something I did on my own. My school doesn't do it, but I know how time consuming it is. But I also know how effective it is. Why is Foothill Oak in Maryland still at 60 and 45% if they were part of cohort number 1? What is the a big obstacle for getting those teachers trained? If they're a high need school, what's going on with that?
Rob, is there a reason that Foothill Oak and,
Maryland hasn't
Maryland.
shifted,
we haven't focused on their schools?
still seven teachers, 45% at Maryland in 2 years. And Foothill Oak did improve, it went from 23% to 60, so that's progress.
Yeah.
But those are really high need schools.
We're definitely prioritizing training for them. There's a couple of things that is happening, happened last year versus what's happening this year. We also, we depend on the county office of education, San Diego County Office of Education for seating available. So they have a max number of teachers that they can train, and this is the full county for that matter. So whether we had subs for the teachers at Papa, they had the subs at the end, we had the subs, but then we didn't have all the seats because San Diego County Office of Education puts a cap on the number of people that they can train. So obviously, some schools have gone faster than others. And again, we are also that, the fact that San Diego County, they're getting lots of teachers getting into class training. The good news about what we're doing with our trainer of trainers is that we are going to have the possibility to have our own training. We did have our first ever training for our teachers in Vista Unified last December. That was hosted by Vista Unified with trainers from Vista Unified. We got one national trainer, and then we had someone else from the County Office of Education. Point being taken is that we need to have more trainings, less dependent on the San Diego County Office of Education, so we have the autonomy to have our own training, and that will expedite schools like Foothill Oak, like Maryland, especially Maryland, because we have to train a few more teachers there.
Yeah, I want us to think outside the box and also maybe pull those teachers on, is it the timing issue for them?
Okay.
Like, is it like they need to go this week versus this week? First, before they come back to school, or maybe after they finish the year? And
Some
maybe,
have signed up, but then at the last minute, the subs were pulled away, so they couldn't go.
yeah, so then that's on us. We need to say, on this day, no other school within our district is gonna have a PD. We're gonna prioritize these schools for GLAD so that our sub pool is available for them. Like, we have to block that out, I think. I mean, I'm not I'm not the queen, but you guys
How many
talk to
years?
me.
2 years I've been.
I mean, help me out. What do you guys think about that? Like blocking out a day to say, these are the days for Foothill Oak and Maryland to get trained with, after we get input from the staff on when it would work for them.
Mhm.
And if it's between the school year for like the initial, there's like these levels, these phases, if you will. Let's find a way to make it work. Let's pull them, what works for them. block out subs, lean on Orange County if we have to, and not so much on San Diego County Office of Ed if they have a high demand. Let's get these numbers higher, please.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Got it.
Thank you.
I agree, and like the second point of feedback is, not sure if there's the opportunity or content for like a 2.0 version, that's a, the 2-day version of it.
So,
What I hear, from, not just what Trustee Smith pulls up, but it's like, there's a lot. And so for staff, I want to get a second person, like they master this area, but now they can master the second area.
so
for that.
there is a truncated version, you're just not certified. So there is a GLAD training that we can bring in, that's more of an introduction to the GLAD, and it basically goes over the top 10 GLAD strategies, and so chants are included, those kind of things. It's not certification though.
So we can, can that be incorporated into this timeline?
We can look into that as an introduction. I would leave it more in that kind of first phase of just introduction, and I would still encourage that we go through GLAD certification, but we can call, it's only offered through Orange County Department of Ed right now. And so we'll call Orange County Department of Ed and see, because that would be a good summer workshop to introduce more people to GLAD, and that's a 3-day training. And there's no observation in that one. You're just learning the strategies.
Right. So that's my caution
Yeah.
is, if you don't get, and I know this, if you don't get the 5 full days.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
It just doesn't have the effect.
Yeah. And
It really
some,
No,
truly,
for anybody that's already done it for the first 5 days.
like a refresh.
How did you, yeah, exactly.
we can offer a
Somebody
GLAD
could've been trained in
refresh.
2021.
No,
Oh,
yeah.
yes, but that's what I've been saying.
But that's a GLAD. Yeah, we can do a GLAD refresh no matter what. For GLAD, anybody who's GLAD certified, there's GLAD refresh, it's a day or 2 that you can do that in. The one where there's actually a specific GLAD program just to introduce GLAD, but you don't get certification with it. So we can look at both and then come back with more suggestions.
And
The
then,
first cohort of GLAD teachers in Vista Unified came from Craven Elementary, Ms. Fiddler being one of them. So 2015 will be the first cohort from Vista Unified.
and then, another point to make it more, is the right word, lucrative for our teachers to collaborate and plan after school? Can we pay them through Title III funds as a grade level, to come up with a chance and all the things that they need to do the prep?
Yeah.
Maybe a certain amount of hours a month?
We're currently doing it.
We are?
We're utilizing Title III funding for anything that is professional development and planning of that kind. So we have plenty of that.
All the time.
Is that available to all sites?
To all sites, yes, all sites. Title III is available to all sites.
Any other further comments or suggestions about GLAD?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next on the agenda is 10C Measure LL Facility Bond Micro Workshop.
Wake up, great.
All right. Dr. Lusher, Grace, thank you for your patience. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Dr. Doyle. Board trustees, we're very pleased to provide you this brief update tonight on Measure LL as we continue to make progress across the board. On the financial page, before we have Grace come give you an update and a preview of the action items later, we see no significant movement. These are all prediction measures on finance. We're continuously making progress on this front. As we look to the next slide, we're just going to walk you through a few things that are happening that you're going to see on action items. We are asking for board approval for moving services, specifically additional moving services required for JROTC and the weight room. The weight room, I think, is obvious to many of us. Lots of weights have to move. We need extra help there. Trustee Morocco, Trustee Smithfield were with me today when we toured the site. Weight room's looking wonderful. We hope everybody can stop by. JROTC has flight simulators and other items. These are extenuating items. ROTC, career technical education, and this field, along with sciences, oftentimes takes more hours to move. That's just a normal process. So that's coming later in the agenda. We're going to go ahead and turn it over to Grace, just to give you a quick overview of our commission engagements and a few other items for you this evening. Items that we've graciously had Trustee Morocco with the onboarding process talking to us about. We appreciate her participation in this really complicated topic of project.
Thank you, Dr. Lusher.
Thank you.
Board members. So building commissioning is important, especially when we have going green, right? Cal Green, Title 24, and making sure that we comply with the design standards and energy efficiency. And so this is another one of those consultants that are required, not tall enough.
No, it's just that.
Okay. That are required in order to make sure that the building that we get during construction, well, design first, during construction and after construction, all complies and meets with Title 24, because as you know, there's additional things in terms of the energy code and making sure that we're supposed to meet all these standards. So we reviewed the proposals, and the proposal on who we're recommending for, and this is going to be in the consent item, is basically a well-known and approved consultant that is utilized by many school districts. And also great thing is our current design architect recommends them as well. So, we try to choose the best that we can to meet our needs and comply. And then the next slide. So the inspector of record is also a requirement. And as you know, to make sure that we meet the correct building standards and code, DSA, Division of State Architect, which is the building for schools, requires districts to hire an inspector that is on site every day. And so we currently have the one that we're proposing, that we reviewed the proposal. We currently are utilizing their services at Vista High. And so we know and have experience on what they do and how they perform, and they know exactly what we need. The great thing is that they have a great relationship with the DSA field inspector that comes out to look, to make sure, and they're on site every day and on the weekends that we've been working and staying late, coming early. And they also are the ones who organize the special inspections that are required for specific types of work at specific times to make sure that we build it right. So that's on our approval, and we would request your approval on that later.
Questions, trustee Smithfield,
Nope.
trustee Vargas,
Not on my end.
trustee Morocco?
No, Grace, you do a great job.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that'll be action item after the consent
Yes.
calendar. Oh, wait, no,
There's a couple on consent and one after.
yes, okay, couple on consent and one after. Got it. All right, next is number 11, consent calendar agenda items 11 through 16. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no discussion on these items prior to the time the board votes on the motion unless members of the board, the staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar. The superintendent and staff recommend approval of all consent calendar items. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Then we can pull after with that.
No, you have to pull something now.
Okay, yeah, I want to pull something.
What is it?
15F. I just have a quick question.
Okay.
All right, so I will make a motion to approve the consent calendar minus 15F.
I will second.
Moved by myself, seconded by trustee Morocco. All in favor of approving the consent calendar minus 15F, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 4-0 as trustee Kelly is not on our call anymore.
Yes, sir.
All right, so next, okay, it's gonna be 15F, approve the overnight and out-of-state travel.
Okay, so my question, it's regarding, I think it's line item number 12, if I'm not mistaken. It's, we're sending the, our photography teacher from RBB to this wonderful conference. It sounds like it's awesome. I'm just kind of wondering why our other, like the other high schools aren't sending the photography teachers to that.
They do it based on teacher request, so that other teachers haven't requested that.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. I move that we approve 15F.
So moved. All second, moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by myself. All in favor of approving 15F, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. Next is 17A, ratify and approve purchase orders. So moved. I'll second, moved by trustee Vargas, seconded by myself. Any further discussion on 17A? Seeing none, we'll take the vote. All in favor of approving 17A, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I,
Well, the measure carries 3-0, no, 3-0 with one abstention. No,
that's,
3-0?
that's exactly right.
That's right.
Okay, 3-0 with one abstention. Okay, I don't know why that fuzzy math makes sense. All right, next 17C. That's the restoration of transportation routes for the remainder of 2023-24 school year.
Thank you very much, Board President. This evening, I'm pleased to come to you with a little different story. Typically, when we've talked about staffing with transportation over the last 19 months since my arrival, we've come with information that's not so pleasant. While this does not represent our intentions that the board has articulated and the administrations are articulated for providing transportation routes for all, this is a positive step in the right direction. We want to start by saying thank you very much to our friends in HR for some really innovative strategies for hiring, particularly for the board as well for adopting those in December of last year. Those are paying off quickly. We do predict that this time we're going to be able to restore our first general education transportation routes at this time. The item that follows this are our tentative plans for next year. We'll discuss those next, of course. But we did ask for a staff recommendation based upon routing and other items. We believe that we can restore 2 routes based upon an analysis and looking out, which is located in your memo, of the students that travel the furthest across the most number of major items, whether those be railroads or other barriers to transportation, and the most numbers of students that we curb. We are recommending in that memo the restoration of the Shadow Ridge routes 1C and downtown routes 1B that go to Mission Vista High School. These are tandem routes, meaning they can't be disjunct. They need to be run together. One follows the other as they move down the line. So that is the staff recommendation at this time.
Trustee Vargas, questions, comments?
About how many students would be impacted by this? Is there a current wait list permission to this shuttle?
Based upon historic figures, we may get as many as 85 students on this route.
And how many are currently on the current routes?
So the current routes, I can get you a number in the Friday letter tomorrow for the most accurate count. But currently we run 2 shuttles in the morning from just here at the ASC, and they run back and forth. This would be 2.
Assessment that they're like 50% being utilized, like 80.
They're about 65-70% being utilized on a regular basis for the primary route, the earlier morning route and the later morning route, which are adjourned or a little less.
Got it. If this were not to be approved tonight, what would be your second recommendation?
Second recommendations would be go back and look at elementary school routes and see what routes would be available for the highest impact.
Yeah, because last time when we discussed this, there was one elementary that got cut that had a higher need, but it wasn't one of our equity schools that scored had the highest. So if we could look at that, but I mean, my second question is if we put this, but the attendance or the usage is 10%, then let's revisit this pretty quickly.
Yeah, we can certainly put a metric on it and bring it back to the board after we have the initial information and report back to you as to the exact number of ridership and if there may be a higher impact.
Thank you.
Trustee Morocco?
I had a question and I can't remember it now, so if you could come back to me.
Trustee Smithfield?
No, I'm very happy that we can get these kids across town finally.
Trustee Morocco?
I remember the question now. How are we communicating that these routes to Mission Vista are in effect? Because my understanding is that there's a lot of families that don't know before they actually start at Mission Vista. So a lot of, especially like a lot of our more diverse families that maybe have transportation issues are not aware that there is these routes, the shuttles that exist, because it's not being communicated to them prior to the kids starting.
Sure.
So what is the communication plan?
Thank you very much, Trustee Marco. That's an astute observation and we don't disagree. We've tried several communication strategies. I don't think we've achieved our target goal. One communication strategy that was in place when I arrived is that it happened centrally. We moved to a diversified role where the school would notify as well. We're still not meeting the number of people getting communicated to that meets all of our satisfaction. So that's something that's continuously up for review to see how we can do better. We're not satisfied with the permutation of communications.
And I guess another comment that came up now that I'm thinking about this, I know part of the challenge with Mission Vista is the first round starts like 6:45.
Yes.
But what time does school start?
Well, that's already back at 8:30. That's
Yeah.
correct. That's how long, yeah.
So if you can figure out, if there's any students that would be impacted by this additional route, then, then we can put people on the wait list and look closer to this side of town. Yeah.
Yes, that's absolutely 100%. So what will typically happen in this scenario is you do have students that are coming from a different zone. So there are wait lists for what's here, but there are students outside, so things will start to shift. And what will happen is students that are living down by Vista Magnet and Center City that have been coming here will then take up that route, which does not stop here, and it will be a more direct route. That's accurate.
And I'm happy about the restoration of this. It really helps, children have, or students choose another type of program at Mission Vista from entire school board boundaries. So seeing no more further discussion, I make a motion to restore transportation routes as recommended by staff, 17C.
I second. Oh, you have a second? No, go for it. You.
All right, moved by myself, seconded by trustee Morocco.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the staff recommendation for 17C, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 4-0. Next is 17D, the tentative school transportation routes for the 2024-25 school year.
Thank you very much. This is a secondary subsidiary topic to this. This is as we start to look forward to next school year, where we believe or where we anticipate we will be. This is a tentative listing. We do believe that there will be more updates to come in the following months. The following routes are recommended as meeting the needs of all current routes, with the exception of 2 that are still being worked on. However, this also includes all school consolidation items with the additional routes for school consolidation and transportation for Beaubier Elementary during the Beaubier Elementary move. So my personal thanks goes to Tracy and her team for really working on several models. This was not a singular model. They worked on several advanced models using some of the software that you heard from our consultant this evening. But not just that, this is also knowledge of Vista Unified, where Tracy and her team were out looking directly at traffic patterns and looking at what was possible. So this is a tentative listing to meet those needs. We do anticipate coming back to the board with more information in the future, but we believe it is important at this time to communicate out to our families that are undergoing school consolidation that we can meet the transportation needs, and to our families moving at Beaubier so they have an assurance of their transportation next year. And that's why we're bringing it forward at this time.
All right, discussion, questions? Trustee Morocco?
Yeah, okay, so I see that there's a route from Taylor Street at Golden Hills Drive. I'm not sure where that's at, to Roosevelt. I'm concerned about what the plan is for these kids that live over here on Oak and that go to middle schools, and getting them to the middle schools. So where would they fall in?
On Monique.
Where?
On Monique.
On Monique?
Yes.
I don't, how far is that? Is that?
That's right over here.
Perfect, okay. And that takes them to Madison, or? That takes them to Roosevelt?
Takes them over the road, correct.
Roosevelt, okay. How long does that take?
We'd be able to provide, and I can go through with the team, and we can provide you with transportation times as well.
Because I'm just really concerned about that taking a long time and we losing these kids somehow. I don't want to lose these kids.
Well, if it would please the board, what we can provide for you is not only the transportation routes that are time estimates that are being proposed, but also the ones that the students that were previously attending Rancho Minerva were experiencing, because
Okay.
they were being transported at distance as
Yeah,
well. So
that's-
we can provide them side by
Yeah.
side for your
Yeah,
consideration.
that would be good. Thank you.
All right. No more further questions or discussion?
Yeah, what about special education? I believe we contracted with a third party at one point.
We still do. Part of what Mr. Burtis was speaking to is, we do currently contract with a third-party provider, and this is per an agreement also with our partners at CSEA as we add drivers that are there. There will always, in every transportation system that I know of, there's always a need for a third-party provider based upon, in particular, when we look out at non-public school placements, which oftentimes are at a considerable distance away from things. This is a maintenance of many of those routes while we begin the process of continuing to add drivers. We will come back to the board with additional considerations for you all to make as we look at the recommendations from PTI. But overall, the board has taken several positive steps that were already listed in his report, but you actually already took in December and January, including the addition of drivers that can drive vans as well. The vans have not arrived. They are electric vans as part of our climate action initiative, but they are on their way. And that includes units to install. So as we begin to do that, we'll have more information on you for how we might be able to modify that.
Got it. And then my second question slash comment is on that electrification component. I know it's part of the recommendations, but just so we have it on the record, we're not gonna have the issue of like having 16 buses plus the vans get stuck in the middle of Vista because they weren't charged, correct?
For the record, we have come up with alternative busing charging strategies that are also consistent with our climate action initiative. What the board can expect to see from myself and my team are some proposals coming forward that have to do with shifting a few strategies for how electrification occurs. One of the recommendations is going to be very similar to what you heard from Mr. Purvis, which is SDG&E can take a long time. Mr. Purvis has provided a number that's been very valid in many districts of about 1.5 years in order to turn things over. Many of those districts are sitting in areas where SDG&E has a stronger grid than they have here. SDG&E is going to need to run lines all the way up to Arcadia to supplement electrical sources here. That will take some time. So we're going to be recommending that we utilize our electricity here at the ASC and OSC a little differently for charging buses, but we're also going to be recommending that we add charging stations to school sites and other locations across the district in advance of the longer term plan. So that way we have places where we can charge those buses. So we're not seeing them either sitting or in worst case scenario, at the Electrify America station down by Starbucks here on East Vista Way.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
It's a win-win because it gives us 3 steps forward with our climate action chargers on campuses. And it also buys us time to put in the permit. So it's actually a really good solution. He's going to be bringing back a comprehensive plan for you soon, so you guys can deliberate on that.
All right, can I get a motion to approve 17D?
I move that we approve the tentative school transportation routes for the 24-25 school year.
Second.
Moved by trustee Morocco, seconded by trustee Vargas. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving 17D, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries 4-0. Next is 17E, advertise a request for proposal for the contractor and architect pools.
Thank you very much, President Alvarado. This item up is twofold, actually 3 parts in total. The first is in response to a regular cycle where we need to refresh our architecture pool. It has been over 3 years since the last refreshing of this pool. The pool is a pre-approved group of architects that we can draw upon. Currently, the district has 4 approved architects in the pool. We utilize 2 of the 4 on a regular basis. The process would allow for people to apply into the next pool so we have architects readily available to us. The second part of this is in response to a board request. When we developed the Measure LL pool, it was requested that by the board after we approved the pool, if it would be possible in the future to expand that pool. And the answer to that question was, yes, we could. After a given time, we're ready to go ahead and expand. And so our recommendation is that this coming summer would be an excellent time to put a posting to expand the Measure LL pool. The third part of this is that we are conducting a significant number of projects on an ongoing basis that are outside the scope of the LL, but are large projects. It would be to establish a second contractor pool available to the district for other projects that the district is conducting through Fund 40 or other sources. So that way we have those items readily available. The theory of action for the board is that moving to a pre-approved pool will increase the number of projects that we can do and increase the quality. You will notice from the last board meeting, the number of times that Ms. Shackelford had to come to you with a rejection of bid. You also may recall the number of times last year I came to you to inform you that we should reject bids based upon a variety of factors. Pre-approved pools, the theory here is that it would mitigate that, so that way we would have contractors that have been reviewed in depth that we can present on projects and we can move those forward more quickly.
All right.
So, Sean,
Yeah.
Dr. Wilson. Verify something for me. So we're doing this pool.
Mhm.
But this won't be for LL projects or LL projects that we already haven't decided yet.
Correct. We would expand it for future projects. No current projects would be anticipated. And when we talk about the expansion of an LL pool, we're not asking for currently approved contractors to reapply. We're expanding the pool. This would be for additional contractors that would return to the board.
So how many contractors in the pool would you go to?
We currently have 3. Ideally, we would want more on the tune of 5 to 6
5.
contractors.
But we'll keep the 3 that we have, right?
Correct. We're satisfied with the 3 we have. We currently have Neff, Balford, Beatty, and Bernard's. Bernard's is building Bovier.
They're contractors.
They're contractors.
I was talking about all protect.
For architects, we currently have 4 architects. We currently utilize, but we can only utilize 2 on a regular basis. That would be Alpha Studios and Renal Clark Architects.
So are we going to add more architects too?
So for the architecture pool, this would be part of the normal refresh cycle. This would be, everybody would we would do a general advertisement, and if our existing architects wanted to participate, they also would
They have
just
to
put it,
reapply?
they would. That's part of the normal cycle of refreshing
Okay.
that occurs.
But they would continue with the projects they're currently working on.
100%. If they're on a project now, they complete the project because they're pre-approved now and they've received that project now.
Can I ask you a question about contractors? This is gonna go in between. This is my last question. Okay, so we have Balford, we have Eric,
We currently have Balford, Neff, and Bernard's.
yes, okay, so, Balford's still with us, I like that.
Yes.
Okay, so the other ones then we just take them out of the pool, they're no longer in the pool, we have our, these 3, and then you're gonna try to build that up.
Correct. We remain with the 3 approved contractors. The board has approved those for the pool. We just seek to follow board direction to expand the pool.
I just making sure that maybe contractors that did my vacation wouldn't have to stay in that.
We would continue with the same stringent requirements that we had before, including a review of all equity policies as part of the interview process, where they have to demonstrate their commitment to our district policies.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to approve 17E?
I move that we approve 17.
Second.
Any further discussion on 17E?
Yeah, Sean, to your last point about the commitment to our values, I not just show it, but be part of the criteria for selection. You know, both on like what they did in other school districts, but also engagement in the community. And so some sort of fact that goes into like the actual selection.
We would be more than pleased to share the rubric with the board that lists a complete section on our district values, including subsections and the point listing. We don't share that outside because that becomes something that they know about beforehand. So we don't speak about the language in there because that's the scoring criteria, but we'd be more than pleased to share that with the board because there is a fixed rubric that both Ms. Chan and I sat together and wrote based upon our policies with a scoring criteria of what gets scores and what are the mentions and the ask for's of each one.
That was the rubric the board already gave us feedback on, but we'll share it with you again in the event that you have more feedback.
Yeah, because those things tend to hold up construction or not.
Yeah, that one and the second one is making sure that it's a company that has no issues with the state architects, ESA, and Should you work
I
with?
think it's,
Valerie?
I think they're pretty good at that.
All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving 17E, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? All right, motion carries 4-0. Next is 17F. Approval for appointment of a new member to a vacant position on the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for a 2-year term for Measure LL.
Thank you very much, President Alvarado. This is an item that we've brought to the board on multiple occasions. This is for a membership chair that is required per the administrative regulation and state education code as part of the CBOC. We are required to have a position open for a business organization member as defined in those. We do have an applicant at this time. This seat has been open for now 9 months, and this is the applicant that has put their name forward.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by trustee Vargas, seconded by trustee Morocco. Any further discussion or questions?
Are there any other vacancies on this CBOC?
I anticipate there will be one vacancy that will come forward in the next CBOC meeting. The procedure for vacancy is that the person submits any request for resignation and then it's approved by the CBOC at the following meeting. I anticipate one more will come in before the next meeting.
Thank you.
All right. All in favor of approving 17F, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? The measure carries 4-0. Next is 17G, approve award of RFP L 23-24-08-00 RFK. Inspector of Records Services for Bond Measure LL.
Thank you very much, President Alvarado. We had covered this item earlier in the presentation. This is our recommendation for the Inspector of Record for the Beaubier project. This is a substantial contract. It is reflection of the size of construction that we are doing of $80 million. This bid is deemed to be competitive. In full transparency on this item, we did receive multiple letters of interest for this. However, this particular job requires a inspection service that has many inspectors working for it. Why many inspectors? We need at least 2 on site on any given day. If we have somebody sick and somebody out for vacation, we may not stop construction. Otherwise, we'll impact school opening. This was somebody that has successfully worked for the district who put forward a highly competitive bid that was checked on and could meet all criteria for that particular bid.
Can I get a motion for
Yeah.
17G?
I move that we approve 17G.
So moved. I will second. Any further discussion on approving 17G? See none, all in favor of approving 17G, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries 4-0. Next is 17H, approval of nonprofit organizations for Associated Student Body ASB fundraisers.
So a little background on our ASB accounts. Guiding principles do not allow these student funds to be pass-throughs for non-student associated activities. There is an exception where with board approval, the ASBs can do fundraisers for outside entities. And so those approvals or those exceptions are required to go to the board on a case-by-case basis. There is an exception that FICMAT allows is that ASBs can do up to 3 a year. And it would allow certain pre-approved charities. So it would be more of an efficiency instead of going to the board each time for each charitable fundraiser, that the board can approve a set predetermined charities that the various student clubs could participate in a fundraiser. So an example what I'm referring to is the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So every other year we bring forward an item where the board has to approve for the ASB funds accounts to hold the funds for these donations as more of a pass-through, and then they're given to the charitable organization. This item would allow these three organizations to be similar to what we just talked about, the architect pool and contractors would be a set of three charitable organizations, American Red Cross, UNICEF, and American Cancer Society, that the ASB organizations could select from these, run up no more than 3 fundraising events. So as an example, Mission Vista has a Key Club, and they the students are interested in running fundraisers to help other children and students. And so an example would be they would do a fundraiser and donate those funds to UNICEF. Why it is required to have board approval is because they are depositing those funds into an ASB account. And an ASB account should only be used for the general student body at that school. And so that's why we're bringing it to the board tonight, because it would be a pre-approval of these three organizations. And this high schools would have the ability to have no more than 3 fundraising events through any of their ASB clubs, to have the fundraising, the dollars run through the ASB account, in which they would issue a check to one of these 3 charitable organizations once that fundraising event has completed. They would follow all of the normal ASB rules and guidelines as part of those fundraising events. So we are in the process of writing an ASB handbook, and this would also be memorialized in that handbook if the board chooses to approve basically a pool of charitable organizations that student clubs could choose from if they choose to, if the students want to participate in a fundraising activity.
Make a motion to pass the fundraising list. Yeah.
Moved by trustee Smithfield. Can I get a second on 17I?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have some discussion. Did you, what kind of research was put into these charities? Did you research them on Charity Navigator and look at their, what is it, the 905 or whatever it is, that was there, like, making sure that the majority of the funds that are raised that go to them actually go to the purpose and not
Yes,
to pay
and they want to
some
make sure that as
CBO.
many dollars go to
Yes.
to children
Yes.
and not to adults
Thank
and not to administrative
Right,
overhead.
Yes, so you guys, you did include that research in it. Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving 17I, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The measure carries 4-0. Next on the agenda is 17I. Approve the resolution 24-18 to increase the reserves committed to textbook adoption by $801,460.
So this is a follow-up from our previous discussion during the second interim presentation. This would be the action of the board. If they approve, these dollars would be committed based on that Muir Highlands boundary transfer that occurred between San Marcos and Vista Unified. And so it's resulted in just adjusting the boundary transfer on the far east boundary between Vista and San Marcos. And as a result, there was a transfer of $2.4 million. And so this would be the second payment that the board, if they approve, would be committed within the general fund ending fund balance, only to be used for this purpose unless they took different action.
So we sold no land. We didn't sell any land for this. It was a transfer of boundaries.
Correct.
School district boundaries.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it was.
What land to be specifically?
The boundary transfer was over the Muir Highlands. And so that development, which is primarily in the San Marcos area, there was no plans by the county to build a road that would go down Buena Creek. And so families would have had to travel over 20 minutes to get to one of the closest of our schools, or roughly 2 to 3 minutes to get to a San Marcos school.
We did this way back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 years ago.
You remember?
Oh, they need a helicopter.
Yeah, you do.
You could have a helicopter
There
to
was
go
no
up
way
and
to
down.
get to our There was literally a hill.
It was
Yeah.
literally a very good situation that we fell into at a very needy time.
Yeah, I just didn't want people to think we were selling land. because that's what it sounded like. But anyhow, it's good. It's a win-win for everyone. I move that we approve 17I,
Second.
moved by myself, seconded by trustee Vargas. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving 17I, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion, any abstentions? The motion carries 4-0. 17J, authorize staff to enter into an agreement to conduct a second community survey utilizing services from the True North Research.
So this would be a second survey that would be conducted. Staff is asking, what you'll see in the background is that flexibility. We're not exactly sure what time we would do it, but it would be sometime between April and June to get a second pulse of what the community is feeling towards adding an additional bond ballot measure. And because the board would need to, if they want to proceed, would have to vote on it by July. So this second survey would be an opportunity, one more opportunity to check the pulse of the community if this is something that they want to move forward with. So it would use True North again for a second community survey. The language currently reads not to exceed $30,000. We do have a final proposal from True North and it's $26,500. The funds would come out of our developer fee fund, so they would not come out of the general fund.
Can I get a motion to approve 17J?
I'll make a motion, but just one minor adjustment. I would push it back to July of 2024. The deadline to submit language is August. I'm not sure what other, if there's gonna be other ballot measures or what the state's thinking. But if that's the case, I want to make sure we can weigh in when we get feedback, if possible.
You're saying you wanted to go as late as possible?
That's late to July, I think it's reasonable, like, I think it's the second Friday of August that paper needs to be submitted. But obviously, as a board, we need to approve it before then.
We can check in on that and get back to you on that, but.
All right, so it was moved by trustee Vargas. Can I get a second? I will second it. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have an issue with using the same company. I think it's kind of conflict of interest. I would prefer that we would use a different company to take the pulse so that we get two completely independent verifications of this. So I'm a no as the motion is worded.
Any other further discussion?
I kind of like the idea of another company doing it. I hate that we have to spend more, all this money again.
With the same company.
I don't know what I'm gonna go, I gotta think about it. I mean, I know we need to know, but I don't know, talk to us.
Well,
Grace, talk to us.
we would want team civics, actually, so that would be Jared to give you feedback, because he's our strategist on this. So we can reach out, we can you guys cannot approve this tonight, so we can reach out and get some feedback from our strategist so that you have it. I don't want to give you that feedback because that's not my area, or nor is it Amy's area of expertise.
Is Jared the guy from the company?
No, not from True North. He's the strategist, the bond strategist. So Team Civics, you've met him before.
Okay.
So we would probably want to reach out to him, pose this question to him and have it get an official response from him. That's probably the best approach at this time.
Okay, I know. So I'm thinking with several hats on, I'm thinking with this, and I'm also thinking of where we are on our projects and
Yes.
things that we need to look forward to. And, we have to do this cleanly. So I'm a little worried if we're gonna go further with this waiting, because we have other things that we need to get moving ASAP if things are gonna work the way they should at Bovier.
Well, it's time sensitive. I don't think, and Amy, you can jump in if you disagree. I've been meeting with Jared, the past 3 months. I don't think, pausing on the vote tonight is gonna disrupt it completely. But absolutely, April, you would have to make a decision. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I
I
don't want to speak for Jared, but what's your thought?
yeah, I would concur bringing on a second firm. We would just need a little bit longer runway
Yeah.
to get them acclimated. They would need to be more knowledgeable about the history of both the district and the community and previous ballot measures to be able to put together that survey.
Yeah, hearing some concerns, I think the best approach at this point in time would be for us to get an official opinion from Jared on this idea of like whether we should use a second firm or how far out we can push it. They're both legitimate questions, and we should have him give us the feedback on it. And this guy, Jared's not affiliated with True North, so they're a separate organization.
Is this something we can vote on if we put it on the agenda for one of our special? Or, I mean, something.
You
Typically,
could,
like
but from an optics, you would
Optics
really
is
want to do
probably
a
not.
regular, because you would have more people able
Well, I
to.
know how important the timeline is on all these things, so.
I'm like,
But Rosemary, Sabrina just said that it doesn't have to go till July, so we've got some time.
No, but we have other things going on that he doesn't know. And those time things are sensitive too, and they're gonna butt like this,
They will.
and we can't have them butt.
Okay.
So if we do that,
they will. have a
then we
problem.
would have to talk, because we are gonna run into other problems, other things
Yep.
that are going on. I know a lot about what's going on, and maybe I shouldn't, but,
That is
Yeah.
why we brought it to you tonight, is because we're sensitive to other items that will come before the board. And we need to separate those items.
Yeah, for me, thinking about like whatever the questions that were asked of these voters to have, to develop a new list of questions. It's almost like, it's hard to really gauge, like, is it a friendlier electorate? Is it someone, I think that the questions being consistent and maybe adding a couple of extra to it would be better information than having like to generate two sets of questions with two sets of,
It's not the questions. It's having a different set of eyes that are interpreting the responses. And that's really what, that's really what it comes down to. That's why I'm saying it would be better to have, a fresh set of eyes going in there that doesn't already have a preconceived notion of what should be the outcome, because they conducted the first survey and they got this. And so there can be times when people feel like there's a bias that they want to be right, so.
I believe the last time that we used them, well, I think we used them this is before my time, the
Yes.
first bond that,
Yes, we used to.
when True North, when they did the first survey, it looked positive. They did a second one and the results were not positive, and they recommended to delay that. And so that's why the Measure LL actually didn't go to 2018. So that
That
was,
in 2015.
yeah, so that was, can be one benefit where they looked at,
there,
they,
then,
yeah.
That makes me feel better.
yeah.
yeah, they did. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
They said no, they said it
No,
wasn't the
that
right
actually
time.
makes me feel better.
Yeah, my instincts tell me, and I'm not an expert in this, is that it's actually the opposite of what you're suggesting. You would want the same firm, because then you have two tranches of data that are similar, and it tells us whether it's going up or going down.
Well, that's what I said. You get your finger on the pulse of the electorate. Like, how are they feeling now after this midterm election? How are they feeling now with the budget of the state of California?
That's right.
So.
And we can get feedback from a professional if you want to wait on that.
Well,
It
I
just pushes it.
wanna make,
No, I'm fine. I'm worried about the timeline, and I see Grace is having a. What back there.
Grace is cussing at me right now. Why are you rocking the boat, Peanut?
No, she's worried about the time, waiting for the time.
Timing is a factor. This for the record, timing is a factor.
all right, so we did already make the motion and the second. We've had discussion. Any further discussion? All right, I'm gonna take the vote. All in favor of approving 17J, say aye. Aye.
I'm gonna eye it because I feel better now.
Any abstentions? All right, the measure carries, the measure passes 4-0, no abstentions. Next on the agenda is 18, but there's no continuation of presentation by the community members. 19A, request for future board agenda items or other business. I do have a conflict, in May, and I want to see if you guys are amenable to changing one of our special board meetings. I have open house with my students on May the 23rd. It's a special board meeting. If any of those days, the 22nd would work or the 21st would work. If not, possibly the week before.
Well, the 22nd is DPAC,
Okay.
and so that's my committee, and the 24th.
We don't typically do a
I
Friday.
can't do it.
Friday's
Friday's
Friday.
24th.
Yeah.
What day can't you be there?
What about the 16th? That's a Thursday, the week before.
I think we're okay. Chris, are you checking the main calendar?
No.
16th. I think the 16th is okay from a district perspective.
There's a showcase at Roosevelt that night.
What about the 22nd, the Wednesday before the 23rd? How's that looking?
That's what I said, there's a DPAC meeting that night.
That's also the special education award night for
Okay.
the county.
Also Vista Magnet, that was the promotion.
Okay, never mind. 21st?
Yeah, I can't, that works.
How's the 21st
21st is
looking
the
for
Magnet School
people?
Steering Committee, but that's 5 to 6, so I think that would be
Added
okay.
senior celebration.
Okay, never mind. The 16th?
The week of the 13th is someday that week.
16th works.
The
That works.
16th.
But they said there was something, what was, there's a Roosevelt, something,
Roosevelt
Roosevelt?
has a showcase that night.
I think we're okay with that.
Okay.
I think we're.
Sure.
Yeah, that works really well.
So it's the 16th. Is it?
Is that okay with everyone? Thank you.
So Chris, we're gonna change May 23rd special board meeting to May 16th special board meeting.
They give us 2 tentative dates for open house and then the staff votes on it, and then I just found out about it, so. All right, anybody else have any, requests for future board agenda items or other business for 19A?
I do.
Yes.
I would like to have, not just a report, but I would like to have a discussion for what our students that require behavior specialists to come into the classroom, what are our procedures and expectations as a district?
A report and expectations, a report,
Well, I think we have to have the discussions of what's happening in our classroom.
report and
And
discussion.
if it's okay with this board that these things are happening,
Mhm.
that's where I'm going with it.
Okay,
My next thing I would like is, last year in our LCAP, we have many areas where year 1 and year 2, they weren't existed, and this past year, we added many things for the first year for a lot of money. I would like a report on all of those items. And, any data to show if it moved the needle or not. And I would like that for public. I want that to be in public. I don't want that in a letter. I need our community to see what we're doing. Also, I would like to have a report on, we have TK, kids ready for TK from Cal Avenue that will be placed at our regular schools next year. And we have for the last few years done this, but we send most of those children without any support. So they're already in the system as having whatever. And we decided to get rid of that program. And now we put them in the general classrooms without support. So we have teachers who are trying to teach kids how to be in school for the first time. And then we have kids with special needs coming in and there's nothing for them. So I would like to see what plan we're gonna have for the beginning of next year to take care of those children. Because I was notified, and it could be wrong, that Breeze Hill is slated to get like 12 in their TK. Can't do that by just doing it. We need to rearrange how we do TK. And then, there's the 3 things. Can I ask for 3 requests from our cabinet now, or you want me to wait till you say the next item?
no, you're saying, you're
You're asking for things on the agenda, but it also says other business.
Go ahead, it's other business.
Okay, so I would also like, when I go through the LCAP, I would like to know exactly how much we spent this year
So our children can collaborate as to how much it cost us when we let them out earlier or late start. So we had to hire 19 TOSAs and we had to hire person to direct these collaborations and this person for elementary. So I'd like to take all those items, have them added up and compare to what we used to spend for collaboration. Because when we went into last year, we were told we had a great system to go into collaborate with, but then when it all worked out, I think we spent way over a lot, and now we have to cut $10 million. I would also like a chart, a diagram of the DO personnel, like we used to get, Matt.
Yeah, we have that.
And then the line items for the community school funding from Alta Vista and Murray, and how those community schools funds were spent. I know we got, somebody asked, and we got something that was broad, that didn't really answer the question. So I want to know this much money was spent on this much money was spent on this is the requisition, blah, 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 blah. And that's it for me. Oh, no, oh, no. I think I need to know, and it might have to go to legal, but I think we broke the law last week at our workshop. Because, so you made the agenda, Martha, and it says, closed session, you can talk litigation, you can talk real estate, negotiations, they can do negotiations and personnel matters. And we went over budget and where we would cut. We should never have had that conversation in closed session. We could talk about negotiations, how much would it cost with what we're offering, but all this other stuff that we did never should have been done in closed session. So I think we broke the law. I would like a follow-up on that from legal. And if you say it's from negotiations, I don't, like, there's budget seats we were given, and it says confidential. And when I went through the president's training, that is like major sin. So I would like to follow up on that, whether that would be a board report or whether that would be a meeting with me. Okay?
Anyone else? All right. 19B. No more comments or comments? Reports?
Oh, there was something it was on the consent calendar, but I really want to give kudos to our staff. $314,000 in CTE grants. Amy, was that it? Amy? Yay, Amy.
Good job.
I just want to say woohoo to that.
All right. Seeing no more reports, comments, reflections, we will adjourn the meeting at